know people like to live off of these all the time. Let's not be a slave to this. Yeah, I got followers, I got this, I got that, and that's all great, man. But I think for the most part, I think living is the most important thing about mixing and doing music, because the lifestyle is not what I want, it's the longevity. I look at my career and I said, you know, I'm totally blessed, I'm happy. And I look back, I'm like thinking, I never wavered. I stood my belief. I didn't screw anybody over. I went in there, I still remember what I had. I had my long ass hair and I had a Hawaiian shirt on because, you know, I'm not going in there with a friggin' suit and tie to work in the studio. She said, are you wearing a parrot shirt? I said, you're damn right I am. She goes, you're hired. Can you start right now? I said, absolutely. So I was doing something and Tony got in my ass. He said, did you get permission from that? All right, let me hear the friggin' thing. And he heard the mix and he was like, do you know what you're doing? This thing sounds amazing.
Hello, everybody. This is Ray Williams from IMSTA. Today, we have another episode of Meet the Engineers and Meet the Creators. I'm very, very happy to have a friend of mine and a longtime associate, Jean-Marie Horvat, who's so generous today to give us a lot of his time to talk about his life, music, and engineering and producing. Jean-Marie, how are you doing, my friend?
Man, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a true honor. And my friend, you know, I love you. I would do anything for you. I told you that anytime, anywhere, even at 8 o'clock in the morning. Southern California.
I am a fan of yours, okay? I met you through Mishka, and I'm a fan of your drum and your vocal. I don't know what it is you do. I can almost always tell it's you just by when I listen to it. There's a kind of there's almost like a separation between the drums and the vocals. There's almost like a gap there, but it's still together. But the drums are always popping. And that's a word that, of course, you have to define, but people know what I mean when I say it. The drums are always popping and the vocals are always right there. So, but there's this kind of space between the two, and then you put the instruments in. So there's a real skill there that I got to tell you, man, as somebody that aspires to make music and do my own music and so on. I look up to you because I can never get my stuff to sound like that. Before we get into all the detail, from the top down, from the 10,000 feet view, what the hell do you do to make it sound like that?
Okay, so my philosophy changed after I left working with Teddy from Virginia Beach because I started doing a lot of ghost producing. So a lot of times when you heard some things that I did, it was me like almost ghost producing. So I started doing remix underneath a name called Riff Raff. And I was doing a lot of these remixes that no one really knew about, just, you know, because I didn't want to separate time and space. You know what I'm saying? My time as a mixer and my space is to be an entrepreneur as a producer. So, you know, back in the day, we used to get acapellas, right? So here's my philosophy. I got the acapella and I'm, you know, I said, okay, sometimes we start with melody, sometimes we start with drums. With me, because I worked with Teddy was always melodically driven. So I would come up with that. It could even be the melody of a percussion track, which would be a shaker or a hi-hat rhythm that really cascades to this amazing thing. So peep out the concept. We got an acapella. We're adding stuff to the acapella. I said, well, shoot, man. If I could do that off of remixes, I might change the game as a mixer by going vocals first. So I started with vocals first, lead or background, and I got the most important thing. As an A&R person, they always want to hear the vocals, right? So they take up the most frequency. Now, kick drum and the bass takes up the most frequency. So young guys will say, I start with kick first, and I start with the bass first. Yeah, it's not about the freaking kick drum or the bass. It's about the song. So when you start mixing the vocals and then adding your instruments and then adding your percussions, the last thing I do is kick and bass. That's why my mixes sound like this. No one can touch my low end. I don't care what anybody says. Everybody even comes up to me, even the young guys that are working more now because they're the it people. They said, dude, we can't touch your low end. And to be quite honest with you, you do less and you get more. And like I said, once again, to all your, 10,000 people that's listening to this, step away from your ego and start thinking more natural. It's not about a kick drum. It's about the song, and it's about the vocalist getting that energy. We want that energy. So when that joint hits the club, that thing is dropping like heavy. Like I use one mastering guy, his name is Dave Kutch. He's asking me to blow his stuff down. Even when we were doing the Robin Thicke record most recently, he was asking me in general, it's like saying, John, everything sounds so content. And Robin's very persnickety about how he wants the things to be heard. We were done mixing. I mean, he was being like persnickety about certain lines, but nothing to say, hey, we gotta start from scratch. He says, John, everything sounds amazing. So I go to Dave. Dave goes, this, bro, the low end is ridiculous on this. How the hell did you get this to do this? Every single time he says the same thing. He goes, this, how do you get the vocals to stand out? And he goes, this, what are you using? So I showed him my plugin list. I said, everything is changed all the time. Now I might go back once in a while and tweak out some plugins. But for the majority of the time, if I don't like something, I take it off right away. Right away. It's like, get past that template thing. Take a fresh song. Have some stuff that you always use, but take everything off the master bus and listen to the song first. And that's how you start getting the culture, and that's how you start getting a sound. Now, I was doing this vibe since 96, and I didn't quite get it till I was at like 90, 97, 98. I went through a lot of hurdles. And mind you, I started working in Pro Tools, I think right after the I Get So Lonely remix. Because I was using Logic for my production and thank goodness for Teddy at that time. And Pro Tools was the front end. And then I started getting into more Pro Tools, and I thought back then a lot of people weren't doing that. And I said, wow, this could be like a traveling tape machine. Look at it now. It's the standard. And I learned different, and there's different languages that we use. Pro Tools, Cubase, Nuendo, which is the same thing, Logic, Studio One. Each DAW has a certain sound. I'm crazy to go to each DAW to see what sounds best. And I just say, okay, this might be this type of mix and that type of mix. Because, yo, man, what did you do? I said, do you like it? He goes, yeah. He goes, man, you got that Pro Tools rocking. Well, it's not. Yo, did you do Logic on this one? No, I use Pro Tools. I throw everybody a curveball because if we get too comfortable, we get, complacent. And the reason why I stay so relevant is because I enjoy listening to young kids' ears. I'm not that guy to get off my lawn type person and think that, that's like as an older mixer, they say, they don't know what music is. This is their time. So we must respect their time so they can respect us. It's like, you're a father, what I'm talking about.
I know that.
You know what you're talking about. It's like, but actually, if it wasn't for my son, I would have never produced Powerglide.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But let's get back to this incredible thing that you have going on with drums and the bottom end and vocals. So you gave us a little bit of a hint here in that you start with the vocals, which is very unusual. When you start with the vocals, though, I imagine you start with the lead vocal. But Jean-Marie, as you know, a lot of times the lead vocal is made up from many tracks, maybe sometimes 20 tracks. Mm-hmm. Do you do a lot of comping, or the stuff comes to you? How do you deal with the sort of plethora of tracks that you guys are confronted with these days?
Well, I look at most recently, like within the last, I would say last 10 years, a lot of people just give me all these tracks. And this is before Pro Tools Ultimate had their folders, which, a lot of DAWs already had that. So to accomplish what I wanted to do, I had to really, I'm a producer's best friend. And file management's everything. So a lot of times, a lot of people don't realize, and I'm telling to the inspiring producers, you don't need to separate every kick drum because that changes the tone. So a lot of times, Ray, I ask them for their FL files, which I very rarely get, But the Logic files, definitely. The Ableton files, definitely, because sometimes they don't know how to transfer it over because each DAW sounds differently. So to keep with that, let's just stay with the vocals and then we'll get back to the instruments. When I deal with vocals, having all those vocals right in front of you can be cumbersome. So take the time to clean up your session. I don't have an assistant anymore. I had a couple of them and they just messed it up because they don't understand the philosophy is because that's the way they were taught. You know what I'm saying? And to reteach somebody that young, sometimes it could be a conflict and then we lose a day. So I'd rather do it myself. You know, I'm not trying to be, you know, I got to do everything. It's just like, I know how I can work and I do it pretty efficiently. And especially right now with technology, I can do, okay, this, and that. Let me clean this up. Boom, boom, boom. When I start doing that, I hear the imperfections in vocals. And then I go in there and I tighten up the tuning without being obtrusive. Take their auto tune, whatever they have, and I might melodyne it because they're off. You know what I'm saying? And they don't know the wiser because I'm coming from a musician's aspect, not as a technical aspect. If you start thinking like as a musician versus to be like I'm an engineer, then you start feeling the music more. And I think that's where a lot of stuff that you and I get along with because you're coming from a musician's aspect, from a producer's aspect, goes, yo, that joint feels right. You know, it's all about taking the time and doing the most efficient job because your last job is your best job to the next job. So take the time to really listen to it. And if it sucks and he messed up on it, guess what? We can go back, you know what I'm saying, and reprint it or redo it. It's not, I mean, take the time to be a part of the session instead of like, I see a lot of young cats right now, and no offense to them, they slap an L2 on it and they say, oh, I mixed the record. You didn't do jack, man. It's like, you didn't take the time. It's like, if that's the case, they could have used the producer's mix. You want to cultivate the sound. I have a lot of problems with the top end engineers right now because it's like, they're making themselves bigger than what they are. You're just a small particle of the song. We're a team. We're a gang, and to win a war, man, we got to come together as a team. So as a team player, you want the best product out there because, yo, I got to go to my man right there because he covered my back, and that's how it happens. And too much dependency on stuff.
You raise a good point there, and I want to just kind of explore that a little bit. When you're working today, a lot of people working in a home studio, there's such a great sort of luxury of having time, but also time seems to also work against art because sometimes people just have to have things done quickly in a rush. Have you had any of those kinds of challenges where you know something could really benefit from more time, but you got all this pressure for time? How do you deal with that, Jean-Marie?
Because I worked on a lot of rap sessions in the 90s, we had no budget. So we had to knock these puppies out. Hence the reason why my philosophy came into play. You know, when I did all the King T stuff, when I did all the alcoholic stuff, when I did all the Rex and Effect stuff, working in the hip hop environment leaves you this much time. So time efficiency, I work quick. I work really fast because if you start settling in on one sound, you're lost. Once again, we go back to, yo, that's a hell of a kick jump. Yeah, but the vocals sound mid-rangey. There's no width to the track. Where's the essence of the track? But you made a great kick drum, or you made a fat bass. Where's the attack to the kick drum? So your gut instincts come to play. Maturity in the business gets you to work more efficiently. I remember that because the way we were working with Robin, Robin is very much an analog guy. And I'm using that because it will kind of dictate how we work. Half of the mixes were done in Logic, half of the mixes were done in Cubase. I have both sessions running, and also Pro Tools. That's how it was working. I was not messing around because I was touching each track at the same time. That's how if I do an album stuff, mixing a record, like one record a day is is great, but having too much time makes it too linear. So the imperfections makes it perfect, if that makes any sense. So it's not about the time, is the time well spent. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times what people tend to forget is that the mixes that the sessions that I get are pre kind of mixed the way they want it, and then I start chopping and taking off. The majority of the time, I take 90% off the kick drums. All the kick drum stuff that they have on there, I usually take off. And the same thing with the vocals, because they don't hear how I hear. Now, because I work differently, you honestly think, and we need to touch on this one, Ray. Ray, you know how I work. 95% of my mixes come from these little speakers. That's my secret on the low end that people don't. I gave gifts to Cool and Dre, Greg Teese, our buddy Greg Teese. I gave it to my mastering guy because they're trying to figure out how the hell am I getting so much low end out of that one little speaker. Same thing happened last night when we are doing the stuff for this guy named Conrad Sewell. He goes, how the hell are you getting low end out of there? I said, you have to understand how. It's very simple. You have a trajectory that's one speaker, not two or three. Like if you have a pair of NS10s, how do you know which one's fatigued? If the tweet is fatigued or the kick or the woofer's fatigued, you can't tell. With that one little speaker, it tells you everything. And if you can get them mugs to sound right on those speakers, shoot. You know what I'm saying? You got a perfect mix. So you have to separate your ego. Like even when I was working on the stuff with Teddy back in the day when we were doing the MJ stuff, Bruce Swedien fell in love with me because I was the only person that had stereo oratones. And it's like, Bruce was like saying, you use those? Because yeah, because once you come to my room, and I seen the same thing. Because a lot of the time back in the day, they only used it for mono. But my philosophy was like this: everything's coming off of TV. This is when MTV was huge. If I want my joints to sound better on TV than on speakers, but it was the reverse. It sounded great on both platforms. So that was one that I had in my pocket. And that's like everybody's, because I remember one time we were in the session, I was working with Cool and Dre. Cool and Dre said, okay, man, do me a favor, flip it over to the oratones. And these were my prototypes that said they are on there. The cubes are already on. But wait a minute, what did you say? I said, the cubes are, goes, where's the subwoofer? I said, there is no subwoofer. Flip it over to the Yamahas. And he put it on the Yamahas, and I can't, I know it's a studio standard, but it's not my cup of tea. But I made the Yamaha sound better than they normally do if you're mixing on them. And Cool goes like this, yo, what the hell is this? And I tried to explain my philosophy. He goes, this, you're trying to tell me you're getting all that frequency. And you know what? We were doing something with Dave Pensado on stage at Mix Fest. It's actually recorded. Guy goes, this guy on this goes, this, he goes, there's no way he's getting that. He's getting 80 hertz out of that bottom end off the little speakers. So I turned around. I said, you want to bet? I said, come up on stage. He's looking around. He's looking around to see if there was a subwoofer on there. He said that I had both sets of speakers running at the same time. I had to shut this dude up because, he was like a snobbish engineer at that time. You know what I'm saying? He's young. I wouldn't say young. I think he was just one rock dude trying to like second guess me. And hey, look, dude, if you want to prove me wrong, that's great. But I know what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? I've done this. This is tested, and we got clientele that, the Grammy thing is great. But the clientele is even better when they come back saying, yo, no one could touch him. No one could touch him on that bottom end.
Nobody could touch you, dude. Seriously. Nobody could touch you. I'm telling you this as a fan. Seriously, I was listening to your stuff. I was preparing for this interview. And I was listening to your stuff. And from the first second, I could tell, man, this is Jean-Marie. From that first kick, I don't know what it is. We're trying to find out today. But tell me something. A lot of what you just said there must have come from many years of tinkering. I mean, did you kind of just stumble into this? Did you do a lot of research on your own, trial and error? What was the process that you went through to kind of discover this sort of technique, your own technique?
It started off in the studio. when I worked with Teddy, we had less, right? So a lot of people, I was the parallel king. A lot of people don't know that. And, everybody says, yo, Manny does that. Manny was my assistant at one point in time. And Manny turned around and goes, I got that from Jean-Marie. So basically, I used less to get more, where a lot of people would use all this gear. And I had it too. I had, I still have my rack of Neves. I still have, all this other stuff, but it started from there. Why are we using this EQ versus the board EQ? Why are we doing it this way versus to that way? You know what I'm saying? This is where the musician came in. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people don't realize that we come from a time when we were playing instruments and we played up on stage and we understand how things should sound like. And my philosophy started to come into trait when I stepped away from what I thought was right until what it felt better. It's not, my mixes don't sound good. I'd rather to make it feel good rather than to sound good. And my philosophy started to come out that way by making the song feel better. So what feels better on a kick drum? Could it be a tube tech? Could it be a pull tech? Why do I need a kick? Why do I have to do it this way? Why do I have to put the EQ first and then the compressor? To me, if I compress the sound first and then rejuvenate it on the kick drum with an EQ, wow, that sounds amazing. Instead of going what people are doing, that's why I'm saying, like a lot of times these young kids are saying, oh, what plugins are you using? It doesn't matter. It's like, no matter what plugins I use, you don't have my ears. I can never teach anybody to mix, but I can rethink their way of listening. So that's where I started coming up with the concept at the low end. Do I need to have an extension? Why is it that I can't hear my 808s the way I do? So my 808s, little trick out there, is I molt it up like if I did it on the console. One side gets distortion, the other one gets the tone. I was going to take that mug and take off all the top end on one of the kick drum and just get that ass in there, right? And then I put another molt on the 808 and put a distortion in there, crank up the compressor a little bit to get the note. So now I'm getting boom, boom. So that seems like there's a kick drum already on there where a lot of these young cats are taking their 808s, taking their 808 tones and putting the kick drum on there. Man, I've been doing that without that. It's a great idea, though. I thought that was a great concept, and it gives it a certain vibe. But for the most part of it is that that's how it started, experimenting, trial and error. Well, that shit didn't work. Let's try something else, And as for the kick drum, I keep it really simple because that's the next to last thing I do in a mix. I have a tendency to go to a distressor, or now with the arouser, which, I know Dave for many, many years. I use the arouser pretty much on everything. And it depends on what type of kick drum sound that I'm looking for, because sometimes a tube tech is something that I like, that I put like 1K and the 1.5K in there because I love a Lang EQ. But there's something about that plugin, that we used to love to, is the pull tech. That bottom end's ridiculous, but sometimes it's too tubby. So what do you use? How about this? Let's use an API and just pop that 50 in there, crank it up about 4 clicks. There it is. Oh, that API didn't work. It's all about the texture of the song, because you might luck out and have 5 songs that you use that same kick drum. On that 6th one, you say, yo, that's shit right there. Take that off. Get past your ego. Every song is different. Every friend's different. You got the cuckoo friend. Then you got the Mr. Goody Two Shoes friend. Then you got this wild out dude friend. Each friend is different, but they bring something to the table. So it's like, if you take yourself out of it, go back to the usual suspects. That usual suspect, you're probably spending 2 hours trying to make that usual suspect. Take that suspect out, put somebody else in there, like, oh my God, we're good to go. Let's go. That's the problem where people sit in their ways like, I have to use this Pultec. I have to use this plugin. Man, there's a plethora of plugins to use. With this, our time as mixers, engineers, and producers, we have a stable of sounds. Where back in the day, you know, we had to make stuff up. And that's the other thing. I make my sound still. I don't use the usual Kittrons. I make my new 808s. And people were asking me like, how the hell did you get the 808s to do that way? Man, I stacked about 5 808s on there and really started using the phasing and all that because I wanted something new on my production. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I like to do.
As you know, in any industry, in any profession, the easiest thing is to follow convention, right? I mean, if you're a doctor, just kind of do what they teach you in school, you'll be fine. In a recording studio, just kind of follow conventional wisdom. Now, what is it about your personality that allows you to be brave enough and comfortable enough to risk going against the kind of conventional wisdom like that?
Because everybody counted me out when I first got into this. I still remember the day when I went down to Virginia Beach, somebody was questioning Teddy, well, why do you have him here? He looks like a rock dude. He goes, that dude knows more about funk and hip hop than you guys ever will know. I was always questioned. To the fact is that even when people talk to me over the phone, I have a very urban accent. You know, it's like I got questioned that way when I was a kid. It's where I grew up. I grew up in the Jersey City projects. You know, we left when I was like around 11, 12 years old to Bayonne, you know what I'm saying? But I lived in Jersey City. And that's where I think that's where I got all my ideas from the different cultures, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, coming to the United States at a very early age, like my mother and father were always questioned as well because they were immigrants, you know what I'm saying? So that I've always been against the grain, people didn't know that I was a cop before I was in the music industry. And before that, I was, the reason why I was a cop is because I was trying to go to school to become a chiropractor. I was going against the grain on everything. But there was one thing that stayed tried and true. If you believe in yourself and not follow people, you might learn something about what's being missed. And, like a lot of times, I try to tell these young cats, they want to be like this person. They want to be like that person. And the other thing is, I don't sell my soul that way. If I don't like something, I'll step away from it. It's not about the money for me. I'm the richest person in the world because I have a family. I was the richest person in the world because I'm in the music industry. I'm going hard still. I make a living doing this. If that doesn't go against the grain, I don't know what is. You know what I'm saying? It's like doing what we do is a gift from God. You know what I'm saying? It's like we have to understand that this is a privilege that we're doing this because it's easily be taken away. And I realize that one day this can go all away. I'm still thriving at it because I don't take it for granted. So what makes me different going against the grain is because I want to be better. I want to do something that hasn't been done before. And that's what a lot of people follow me. But also there's a lot of trials and tribulations because I don't follow suit. I don't follow like what everybody's doing. I don't believe in the fact. It's like I remember working with Rodney Jerkins one time, and I came this close to getting the Ferrari, right? And the better nature of me, because I'm living in Los Angeles, I'll get a nice Modena, When I thought about it, that's going to satisfy me from my ego, and to get attracted to the wrong people. I don't want to be that dude. You know what I'm saying? I'm the guy behind the scenes. You know what I'm saying? So I bought gear instead. I did the right thing, not what was expected to me. Because everybody said, yo, you're still driving in that 5.0. I said, yeah. It's like, I'm not trying to outshine the master either. I don't really, that doesn't satisfy me. Now, if you see me driving in a 1967 Chevelle, then I'm doing it because I'm paying for that damn gas. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's like, it's great to have a brand new Ferrari. It's great to have a Mercedes. But when you're driving up in a classic like that, they say,
Yeah.
oh, he's doing it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because anybody can buy a brand new Mercedes. And then guess what? If you can't pay that mother off, man, they'll take that shit right away from you.
Exactly. Exactly. So let's talk about Jersey City. And you grew up in Jersey City. What was that like? What was it like growing up there? What kind of music did you hear? Were your peers into music? Tell me about your childhood in Jersey City.
Well, I was raised by several mothers.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised by because when you live in the projects, like my mother and father we lived there because we lived in the community. It was interesting because my mom and dad worked the graveyard shift at the factory. So after school, in the courtyard, in the jacks, there was several mothers, and you get out of line, you're gonna get your ass whooped no matter who the hell you are, right? So having that as a foundation was probably the most amazing experience, and I could still smell the empanadillas being cooked by Mrs. Ortiz up on the floors. You could smell the essence of that, and it's also like the music of it, because come Saturday you used to hear salsa music all the time, and then you used to see the Cuban families come out with their timbales right in the middle of everybody, and that live aspect of it. And then I had a couple of Haitian mothers and a couple of Jamaican mothers that brought that culture to the fold. And then Miss Violet, they're the ones that raised me. She brought me to church. I'm Catholic by religion, but I'm very spiritual. I believe in all forms of religion. But she's the one who brought me to Sunday school. She was the one, to Bible class, and because my mother asked him, "Can you take care of my son while I'm gone?" So I did everything that Kevin did. Which my friend, that's Miss Violet's son, and we went to, and that I started learning about gospel music. And I always felt that every time I went to Catholic, church, it was like, oh my God, someone's dying. Like, it's like where there was a spiritual thing going on in the Baptist church. And, I worked for Gospel Centric, and they said, how do you know about the commission so much? I said, it's where I grew up. So there was a lot of music. There was a lot of, like, everything was based upon culture and music in New York. I can't say that I can't say that I didn't find that here in Los Angeles. You have to look for it. But in New York or New Jersey, as soon as you step outside, something's cracking. Whether it be the weather changing, whether it be getting a slice of pizza, because you get slices out in New York or New Jersey. Having a conversation with somebody, there's a rhythm. Like, there's a rhythm in the way they talk. It's always something like this. It's always something. There was always a pattern, and I think that really encompassed me to listen to music at a very early age. My education in music was based upon Sesame Street. That's the first time I've ever saw it. You can still remember that. I still remember this, looking at Stevie Wonder playing Superstition on Sesame Street. The culture was always there for us as children, and it's like, I kind of miss that from my kids are like that, because there's constantly music in the house. When I cook, when we clean the house, even when before my session starts, there's always a radio playing in my room, at a low volume, or some type of media that's keeping my brain working. It's like, and so there might be, like, a lot of people ask, it's so funny. I got to bring this up. I was working at a studio, and this guy, this guy goes this. He goes this. Johnny doesn't work. Johnny doesn't do anything, man. He's always watching TV. And my assistant Zach goes this. Why don't you ask him why he does that? So my philosophy, when the TV commercial comes on, the vocals always sound great. That commercial. So what I did is match my lead vocal to the broadcast file inside the mix, and they were blown away. They say, so he's just not watching TV? He goes, no, man. He's mixing around there, so he's competing with the broadcast files. That's another trick that I did. So I brought the media up. not not music, but the vocals, like on TV shows and commercials. If anybody sees it, because everybody say, "Yo, he's just watching TV." He goes, "No, man, he has that, and he A/B's it, and see if he has the right frequencies, because that's a selling point. It's a marketing point." So I learned that from marketing people. Like the best vocals I've ever heard anybody cut were like people doing voiceovers. So that's what I did. So anyway, going back to that whole thing, there's always some type of media going on just to get them away from the phones. You know, we all got into Instagram, we all got into Twitter, we all got into that. I had to start backing away from it because I lost sight of what's important. And what's really important is living. You have to live. I know people like to live off of these all the time. You know, this is a tool. This is not, let's not be a slave to this. And I think that's where I tried, and that's the other reason why I go against it. Yeah, I got followers, I got this, I got that. And that's all great, man. But I think for the most part, I think living is the most important thing about mixing and doing music, because the lifestyle is not what I want, it's the longevity.
Now, tell me about your parents. Were your parents immigrants to the United States? And if so, where did
Yeah,
they come from?
Croatian. My heritage is from Croatia, so they went from Croatia to that time former Yugoslavia to France, and I think they were there for like about 4 or 5 years before I was born. And my aunt said when I was born, they said, "Why don't you take the family here? It'll be a better life for my brother Valter and myself." And that's how we came to the United States in the 60s, I think.
And that's why you have a French name, Jean-Marie?
That's why. Yeah, so I have a French name. That's
You're
the
born in
reason why.
France.
I was born in France. A lot of people thought. A lot of people thought when I still remember this. A lot of people thought when I first came out to Los Angeles, and they said, "Hey, you worked with Teddy Riley." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "How's that female engineer?" I said, "Female engineer." I said, "What female engineer?" He goes, "Jean Marie." "No, Cat, I'm Jean Marie." And they went, "Oh, wow, my bad." And then I was working with I forgot their names, and I'm talking to this cat. And he's never met me before, right? Remember, there's no social media going on. He's never met me before. I did at that time. I didn't want to do interviews. It was not about me. It was about the music. So I tried to very rarely do any type of interviews in the '90s. Out of respect for Teddy too. It was not about me, you know. And so I'm talking to this cat over the phone. So he goes, "Okay, let's meet up at, let's book the session and, do it," right? So I forgot. John Nettlesby. It was John Nettlesby. John Nettlesby comes in the studio. B goes, "Hey, how you doing?" I say, "How you doing, man?" He goes, "I'm looking for Jean-Marie." He goes, "I'm here, the one and only," right? And he walked out. And I said, what the hell? Did I lose the gig?" He said, "Man, I had to step back for a second." I said, "What's up?" He goes, "You're white." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I thought you were Haitian the way you were talking on the phone." I said, "No, man, no, man, no, man, no. Why does the day born, baby?" I try to tell people, let's get past the color barrier and understand that we're all human beings. Remember the Miss Violet, Miss Pat, they raised me, and they didn't raise me as a white child. They raised me as a young man, and that's the difference of a lot of things that I'm used to. I didn't. I'm married to a beautiful black woman, and I didn't see race up. I just saw beauty. That's what I saw when I was a kid. That's what I was raised with, was that type of beauty, that type of culture. She's a highly educated woman. I'm just a fool from the jacks, that from the street, you know what I'm saying? So I'm a little different. But I think a lot of times when people say, Jean-Marie's mixes and Jean-Marie's music is based upon the culture that he was brought up with. And I think my parents were bringing me to that fold, and actually let my mom and dad really raise, like, they let them raise me, because sometimes European parents can be very very, any parent will be like very protective. but they knew where I came from, and they knew how happy I was, and they knew that there's something different about this area.
Did you play any musical instruments as a child?
I did. I did. I started off as a guitar player. I was in a metal band called Talisman, and into this group called NRG. And it was based upon, if you took metal or heavy or hard rock, hip hop and soul, that's what was our sound. And that's where I met Teddy, after that, because we got signed and dropped at the same point. So it was ridiculous. Yeah. So when Teddy met me, I didn't know who Teddy Riley was. I just saw this cat playing the ham, and I said, "Man, you're bad." Yeah, what I'm gonna tell you. I said, "Man, you're bad as hell, man." So I'm playing the guitar, I'm doing like tapping, and he's playing the ham, and he thought I was an engineer, and I was just a runner. And we got along very well. We got along very, very well.
At which point in your life do you decide to become an engineer? Because you come through high school, I imagine you were into music, but you must have been into other things as a teenager. What are some of the other things you're interested in, and how did music win out over those other interests?
Well, my son took over where I left off. I love baseball. I wanted to be a baseball player. Yeah, exactly. I wanted to play baseball. But when I was younger, I used to get picked on as a kid, right, because of my name. And one day I snapped, and that's when everything changed. So I was very, not angry, but I was always like fighting for everything. And I didn't get along with the coaches too well. So what I did do at the age of 12 and 13 was get into the martial arts. So that was my sports, and which there's a story to this. So that's what I took up in school. Had a decent reputation, as being a psycho, and I was pretty decent with my hands. And that led me to be, I graduated high school. I was in a band as well, and I wanted to go to college because that's what was expected of me to do, right? So, which led me to be an investigator, a cop in Hudson County because of my hands, right? But what led me to to do that was the ability to understand what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be a cop no more. I didn't want to go to college no more. Music was always in my system at a very young age. I started playing guitar around 13, 14 years old just because I wanted to meet more girls. That was it. I got into the music industry for the girls, not for the profession. And the only reason why I became an engineer, mixer to say, is because I wanted to be a dope producer. So my guitar teacher named Abel Dominguez goes like this. He said, "What are you going to do now?" I said, we were doing these sessions, and there's this guy called an engineer producer, and I hated what he was doing. He said, "Well, if you want to be a dope producer, you should go and learn about tones." And that's how I went to IAR. I never finished IAR because I thought what they were teaching was bullshit. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and nothing against them. It was a curriculum. That was just me being young. There's a curriculum to this stuff. So when I went to work I got an internship in my second semester, and they couldn't take
And
me
where
on.
was that? Which studio did you get the
Crystal,
internship?
it was Crystal Sound Recording. Abigail Reese was the studio manager, and she really was. She was monarching me to take over. She said, "I got something better for you," because the owner wanted this valedictorian named B to be the engineer at that studio. And so Steve Abiakis went with that person, and Abigail said, "Look, I want you to go and see Suzanne at Sigma Sound Studios." I went in there. I still remember what I had. I had my long ass hair. Yes, I did have hair. I had my long ass hair, and I had a Hawaiian shirt on. Because if they can't accept my craziness, I didn't want to. I didn't want to have to deal with that shit. Because I'm not going in there with a friggin' suit and tie to work in the studio. I wanted to get in the guts and glory of it. And she said, "Are you wearing a parrot shirt?" I said, "You're damn right I am." She goes, "You're hired." Just like that. She said, "You're hired." She goes, "We love crazy." So they didn't say start tomorrow. They said, "Can you start right now?" I said, "Absolutely."
So now you're in there, uh, but you're the lowest person on the totem pole. What did they have you doing?
Phones. Phones first. Phones and yeah, I was the reception for like the night reception, right? But mind you, I didn't go to IER to become an engineer. I went to IER to be a producer because I hated the rock music that was being done. There was too much fucking reverb on everything. You know what I'm saying? There's too much reverb on the snare. It's like, dude, that doesn't sound real to me. You know, that's when the pop rock bands were in there. Everybody's wearing tight. I didn't understand that whole tight pants thing, man. It's like it was bad enough I wore tight jeans, which I didn't like. So when Jabros came out and Cabaricci's were baggy a little bit, I was in heaven. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, why the hell am I wearing like tight women pants? You know what I'm saying? That's my philosophy. That's growing in the city. You know what I'm saying? I was down with some combat boots, some Timbos, and some Lee or Levi jeans that were a little bit like they're snug, but not that your joint's gonna get all like raveled up like that. That shit didn't make any sense to me, right? so 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 a guy was working at Sigma, and mind you, I wanted to be a producer. So Teddy, I was doing practice sessions. I shouldn't have been doing practice sessions. I was there for like 2 or 3 months. I met Tony Maserati. I love him to death. Tony was the one who brought me into the room in October. So this is the timeline. I started in 1990 at Sigma, May of 1990. Met Tony Maserati in August. Made fun of his name, right? I used to say, his name is Tony Maserati? Well, I'm Johnny Ferrari, right? Just making fun. He heard that. He thought it was hilarious. Me and him got a bond. Now, Tony's very persnickety. He's extremely persnickety, right? Somebody didn't do a good session with him. So he said, I want a runner. I want Jean-Marie. So I left to go home in October. And they called me back. He said, are you home? I said, can you get back here? I said, wow, what's up? Because Tony wants you to assist him.
Please, Jean-Marie, for the people watching, explain what a runner is.
A runner does everything, all the shit work. Basically, clean up, run to the store. You're just a peasant amongst all the peasants. And I loved every bit of it. I loved it. The librarian, the receptionist, the toilet cleaner, the coffee maker. I am everything as a runner, or as they called it, I love this one, a GA, a general assistant. That means you need to generally clean up that shit. So that's what a runner is. That's what a general assistant is. Call it as it is. In England, they used to call them T-boys. I never want to be a T-boy. I was a runner for the whole studio. He just took a liking to me because he loved my personality, and I wasn't afraid. And that's what brought me in the room. And it was a full force session. It was doing Cheryl Pepsi Riley, right? He looked at me, he goes, listen, don't touch anything. Don't touch a freaking thing. So when he wasn't looking, I was going. He said, you son of a bitch. Because he loved me, right? So that's how I got into the business, was because of Tony bringing me in so early. So I went from a phone receptionist to a general assistant to a general assistant engineer, right? Ray, I didn't know jack shit about jack shit, all right? I didn't know anything. Mind you, when I went to school, they didn't have an SSL board in there or a Neve board. They had an RCA broadcast board and a Soundcraft board, I believe, right? And we didn't patch anything in. And this is my problem about certain curriculums, you know? So make a long story short, I'm doing the full force session, and Bow-Legged Lou gave me a nickname. He called me Harpo because I had the hair, right? And we got along really, really well. And about 2-3 weeks into, I think it was November, there was Keith Sweat started his new record, and Bobby Wooten was in there. And Bobby and I were talking. He goes, why don't you take one of my reels, right? And do a practice session in the other room. Now, mind you, to do a practice session in the studio, you have to be there for like at least a year. I took advantage at any point in time to go in that room and learn everything about the board. Everybody was mad at me, but they liked me. But they knew there was something going on. So I was doing something, and I took the pleasure principle reels from downstairs in the locker, and Tony got in my ass. He said, "Did you get permission from that?" And, Tony's very stickler. He goes, "This, yeah, I got permission." He goes, "No, you didn't. You didn't call the label." He was really testing me because he was trying to protect me. "Did you make a safety copy of it?" I said, "No, man." He goes, "That's stupid. What happens if you record?" He goes, "Man, Tony, it's already split out." He goes, "Doesn't matter. All right, let me hear the friggin' thing." And he heard the mix, and he was like, "Do you know what you're doing?" I said, "No, what I do now?" He goes, This thing sounds amazing." And he's looking at the patch bay. Nothing's patched in. He says, "You're trying to tell me you got all that low end from this console," which was an E series. It was a producer. He goes, "Next time, make a copy of it. Keep doing what you're doing." And Lolly Grodner, who I thought hated me, was the second highest assistant there. She said, "Jean, if you don't know what the hell you're doing a great job doing it." He goes, "I've never heard a mix sound like this come from somebody that doesn't know what they're doing."
Okay, but now please, Jean-Marie, we know you were doing something. Okay, so what exactly were you doing?
EQing, altering the frequencies on an
What
SSL
about
desk.
padding? What about padding and placement in the stereo spectrum?
That was one thing, but you know what I was doing? I was doing drops. I was rearranging the song. That's why Teddy fell in love with me, because bringing up Bobby Wooten, I was doing a reference mix. Now mind you, Teddy thought I was an engineer. He didn't think I was a runner. He only found out 3 or 4 days later when I was doing a practice session in Studio B at Sigma, which was Bobby Wooten's tapes, that I said, we're talking, it was a GA needed, mind you, I'm assistant and GA at the time. GA needed in Studio A, which was Keith's wet room. He goes, "Where you going?" I said, "I got to do a run." He goes, "You got to do a run?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm assisting. I'm GA today." And Teddy stopped. I went to Carnegie Deli to bring all the food back. And Mike Scalcione goes to this. He goes, "Come with me." I said, "What happened?" He goes, "Everybody's in Studio B." I went, "Oh my God, did I blow a tape?" I'm like thinking Tony Maserati, like saying you should have made a copy of the tape. But the tape was given to me by the producer. And Teddy was like this. Everybody was there. Bobby, Keith, the other engineer was in part of the session. And he hit play and he goes, "That's how I want my drums to sound. Get my drums to sound like that," to the other engineer. And he walked out of the room. I said, "What just happened?" He goes, "You might have a gig."
Now, what kind of drums were these? Were these live drums or they were program drums?
Program drums.
So what were you doing to the drums? You really got to try to remember, because this is so critical, because I'm sure it's a lot of the same things you're doing now.
I was pushing it in the red.
But you're not supposed to put it in the red. You're not supposed to push it in the red. That's why the red is red.
It sounded great to me. It sounded great to everybody else. And I was over compressing the snare. I was over compressing the kick drum. And then because I didn't have any EQs, well, I had EQs, but I didn't know how to do it. I heard about this thing called a mult. So I started parallel compressing without even knowing what parallel compression was.
Now, please explain this, because you are famous for parallel compression. I even heard Dave Pensado said that you gave it to him. So please explain for everyone watching, in the most basic way, what is parallel compression?
Parallel compression is basically sending your kick drums at that time going through a bus, and that bus would go into a kick drum, and then you coincide the kick drum and the compressed sound to have another frequency response to the kick drum. That's what parallel compression did. I picked that up from Mike Barbiero, this rock guy, because he did a parallel compression on the snare. So I said, well, if he's going to do that, why can't I do this? And that became a whole new different thing when it came down to, I call it mastering within the mix. So I would parallel compress my kick and snare to get that snap that Dave loved. He always wanted that Teddy snare. So I showed him that. I used the 160 XT at that time. So I went out of the bus into the 160 XT. That came up on the channel. And then on the kick drum, I would use 1176, the EQ on the channel. Then I would use also the Pull Tech. And then I would use an LA two-way or LA two-way 1176, depending on how my ears are feeling that day. So the LA two-way is a slower compressor, and the 1176 is a little bit quicker. This is before the stresses came out. And that's how I played around with the kick drum frequency. Then I did another trick where I would be triggering off the signal tone from the console, the signal generator, to a gate. So every time the kick drum hit, that would be my low end. And I did that without knowing what was going on. That I thought about it as a musician because I didn't know anything about MIDI except for what was taught at school. So I took a frequency, a regular frequency, and I chopped up that frequency by using the gate. So I keyed it off to that. So that would be my kick drum sound. That's how Teddy started saying, I want that low end, because nobody was doing it at that time. And I still do it today, but I still use that trickery today. But instead of using a console, I use the single generator inside the DAWs.
Now, which frequency are you generating, if you don't mind sharing?
60, between 45 and 60. Depending on, because remember, those are just notes. Every frequency is a note. So you get the 808 tone is a frequency, right? It's the same thing as signal generating. It's a frequency. So if you're a musician, just hit a keyboard or find the right frequency of that thing, and you can look at the notes versus the kilohertz and the frequency spectrum. It's going to give you the note. So if it's A sharp, I think it's 55.
But the signal generation is there for calibrating. It's not for using in a mix. So where did you get?
Why not?
Why did you think?
Because it was on the console.
You should use it in a mix when it's just there for calibration.
Because it was on the console. Why not just turn it on? I didn't give a shit. Said, well,
Jean-Marie, I tell you, it's your approach. I mean, your kind of daring approach to I guess life, and a lot of it, I guess, comes from Jersey, as you said. Mm-hmm. I think just looking at it from an outsider and somebody who's known you for a very long time, I think it's contributed a lot to your career and your success. Wouldn't you say?
I think I'm blessed. I think I'm more blessed than contributing. I think I'm more blessed that God gave me an opportunity to do this line of work. But I'm also blessed enough to know that I'm not trying to follow anybody. You know, I'm not trying to follow anybody's career. I'm not trying to be the next somebody. I'm not trying to be like, I'm a big fan of Rick Rubin, but I'm not trying to be the next Rick Rubin. I want to be the better Jean-Marie. And dealing with dealing with politics and all that in the music industry, I don't go for that shit. I don't. I'm not trying to be like the next Grammy winner. I want to be the person that contributes to the next hit record. I want to be the person that I don't do tags when I produce. I think that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. But I understand why kids do it, because they want to get paid. But to me, it's like, I think people hunting you down versus then hearing you is different. Like, still people to this day thought I mixed Powerglide. I didn't mix Powerglide. I wrote and produced Powerglide with Molly Mall. And that was an amazing experience. But Molly Mall also turned around and said, "You're not ghost producing ever again." That's it.
Yeah.
We're going to talk
about that. We're going to talk about that Powerglide project. And Marley Marl is, he's a good friend of mine as well. I love that man. So now tell me about you. Teddy comes into the studio. He sits there. He hears your drums. It's like he says, "I want my drums to sound like that." Now, how does it go from there to where you're down in Virginia Beach working with him?
All right. So 2.5 weeks later, there was a session that Dave Way couldn't do. It was for the New Jack City soundtrack, and the song was called "Let's Chill." That was supposed to go to Keith Sweat. He called me in on that session as an engineer, and I was like, "What?" I said, "Okay." I said, well, "Dave's going to come in the next day. You just have to prep up." I said, "Okay, great." Dave said, "Hey, you did a great job." So he came. He had a wedding Saturday and Sunday. They came back in. Dave was there. He said, "Man, you did a really nice job." He goes, "I heard a lot about you." I said, "Thanks, man." I was like really, geeked out. I said, "Thank you, brother. Thank you." And then the next thing we heard was Teddy is doing a Michael Jackson project. He took all the stuff and went to soundtracks. The next thing we learned is that he got the Michael Jackson record and they all went to California. So mind you, that was November. I just started in 1990 in May, right? Teddy comes back 1991, which is like months later. And Luke Eben, who is an amazing producer, entrepreneur right now. He's an amazing guy. He said, "John, come in the office." He became like the studio manager. I said, "What happened? What's going on?" He goes, "I got a phone call." I said, "Okay." "Teddy Riley's coming." "No way. That's awesome." He goes, "They want you." I said, "That's amazing, man. I love Teddy. Give me Dave's number so I can set the room up." "That's what I want to talk to you about. He wants you to engineer the project." I said, "What?" He goes, "He wants you to engineer the project." "What do you mean?" He goes, "Which assistant do you want on your session?" I said, "Brian, give it to, Brian Kincaid, bring him on with me." And that's how it happened on that sense. This is where it gets funny. Wayne Cobb comes in. You know Wayne? Remember Wayne?
I know Wayne.
Yeah,
yeah, man, trumpet player.
Wayne Cobb comes up to me. He goes, "You sure Jean-Marie?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You like working at Signal?" I said, "Yeah, it's great. Why?" He goes, "Teddy's going to ask you to work with him." I said, "Get out of here. He ain't going to ask me to work with him. You got Dave Way." He goes, "Dave's decided to stay in LA and Dave suggested to get you." And they both were in agreement because he asked about you and Teddy asked to say, he goes, "What do you think, Dave? What do you think about Jean-Marie?" He goes, "I was going to make that suggestion to you." That me and Dave are still close to this day. And he came back. Teddy was late as usual, a day late. And we set everything up, but we couldn't fit everything in the room. We were downstairs in Studio C. And he turned around, he says, "I don't want to be here no more. I came here for you." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to be a dope-ass producer." He said, "I will teach you that, but guess what? You're going to make your money doing mixing records." I said, "But I'm an engineer." He goes, No. You're beyond an engineer. You're like me." And that's how it happened. And I started my career right at that
Now,
point.
how old are you? How old are you at this time, Jean-Marie?
I think I was about 21, 22.
So what does this mean to a 22-year-old brain to hear an extremely successful producer give you such a compliment?
I didn't see him as a successful producer. I saw him as a friend. That was the difference. He was my friend. He still is my friend. He's my brother. I didn't see it that way. And that's the other thing. He also knew I was never starstruck. Nothing really fazed me. Because I come from the streets of Jersey City. This is how we eat. I don't give a shit what you're about. You just got more money than me. That's it. But if I cut you, you're going to bleed. It's like, that's the way I look at it. So when people understood who I was, I think it's my personality that not a winner's mentality, is that I look at life as a gift. And seeing a lot of people of my age now and of my age then that have not gone where I went, I look at myself as truly blessed. But because of the way I was thinking, I wasn't about the glitz and glamour. I'll give you a quick rundown. So I wanted to get a Mercedes SL. This is the reason why I bought gear. Teddy looked at me. Mind you, he's my brother, right? This is the summer of 91. I'm feeling myself a little bit now because I'm starting to get paid a little bit better. You know what I'm saying? The money started to come in. And I said, yo, I went to the Mercedes dealership with Teddy. I said, yo, I want that. And Teddy stopped. He says, hey, Jean, I tell you what, man. And Teddy had cars to days. He goes, I want you to do me a favor. I'm thinking about getting rid of my car. Why don't you take my car for a couple of months? This is what Teddy did for me. Take my SL, pay my note, pay the maintenance. This dude had it stretched out, paid everything, right? I was driving that puppy for a month straight. Teddy didn't say anything. I got a phone call saying, Mr. Horvat, Mr. Riley told me that you have taken over the payments on the car. Yes, because it's okay. This is the monthly payment. I went, oh, shit. I said, okay. Now, mind you, I was doing well, but not that well, right? I said, all right, I got you, right? He said, 3 days later, Mr. Horvat, hi, this is such and such from Virginia Beach, Mercedes. We're scheduled you for your maintenance for your car. I said, no problem, right? Man, I got that bill. I was like, you know what I'm talking about, right? This is before, you know, but you know, all right. So now I'm in deep right now, right? Now this is a lease. This is a lease car, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things says, Teddy said, don't cut my car. Just like basically said just like that. So that thing had to be like babied up. Every week Teddy would get that thing washed. Now mind you, that's Teddy Riley money. That's not Jean-Marie money. That's Teddy Riley money that you're talking about, right? And I said, Teddy, he goes, John, how you doing? This is after the first month. I said, man, I don't know, man. I'm gonna have to sell this. He said, did you learn your lesson? I said, what? He goes, did you learn your lesson? I said, don't live beyond your means. You come from humble beginnings, and God's gonna bless you if you really need that. He's only gonna provide what you really need. He said, this right here is for the fan base. And he gave me back all my money because I had to teach you a lesson. Wow. And that was Teddy Riley.
Wow.
Yep.
What a story.
Yeah, that was Teddy Riley.
So now you're working with Teddy. What was that first mix like? Because you must have been a little bit nervous.
I was for a hot second. I was for the first mix, the Dog Me Out mix, because I tried to be too perfect. And this guy named Frankenkemper was his name. I thought he was going to take over my job. And I felt, you know, a certain way about that shit, a little jealous. And I went home, I washed my face, and I said, F it, I'm going to do it my way. So then we did the Let's Stay Together remix, and I went in, and that was it. I didn't give a shit about anybody else. I'm not following any damn rules. And that's what Teddy wanted. So the second mix was like that. The Dog Me Out remix was the first one. I had hands on that. This Let's Stay Together was the next thing that we did. And we went down to Virginia Beach in June, around that time, like around June. And Teddy said, listen, man, guys on tour, I want you to come with us. I said, Teddy, I can't leave. I need to make money. He goes, no. You're getting paid with me. So I was there working on Michael Records on the Guy tour in Japan. So by the time we landed in LA, we're ready to go, right? So I'm working 2 jobs as his engineer and then as his live guy on the side. So my job, it was a freaking party, Ray. My job was I had this big old PV desk, right? And I had all of Teddy's sounds on that desk that I fed out to the monitor guy and I fed out to the house guy. I think it was Huggy was the house guy. I'm having a ball. I'm doing drops and cuts on the fly. And Teddy's like, he's like, say, you're crazy. I totally screwed every musician up on there because I wanted to have a good time. And all the musicians afterwards said, yo, man, Teddy stuff was falling in and out. He goes, yeah, that's Jean-Marie having fun out there. that John, you doing that? He goes, well, if you want me to say, he goes, nah, man, I just didn't know what the hell was going on in the first show. So I'm looking at Dinky. Dinky was the MD, and I was like, Dinky, I'm about to go. He goes, okay. It's like, so I had this 808. It's like there was one time with the, it was like, why you want to DOG me out? Why you want to dog me out? And I'm like, just boom. I had that 808 cranking. Teddy went like this. He said, fuck is that? I said, the 808. We had a ball, man. So by the time we landed into LA, the reputation started coming out and saying, there's a crazy white boy working with Teddy Riley named John Marie. So my word got around a little bit, right? He goes, he's nuts. So we landed, and Teddy said, come with me to Larrabee. Now, Teddy had to talk to me on the plane. He said, listen, they don't want any more engineers in the room, but I need you there because of your vibe. We need to fix this, Sean. You know this inside and out. So you're going to be my tech, my assistant. I said, okay. So we went in there. I met Bruce Swedien the night before. Right next to me was Michael Jackson, right? I said, how you doing? I said, oh, shit, it's Mike. I said, how you doing, brother? Just like that. Just like that. I was more geeked out meeting Bruce Swedien than I was meeting Michael Jackson. Everybody's like, so how was meeting Mike? I said, oh, man, he's a cool dude. Nothing fazed me. So the next morning, Teddy said we got to be there at 10 o'clock because Mike liked this was like real hours, like 10 to 6, and that's it. And then Teddy would do everything else afterwards, right? So we met up at 10 o'clock in the morning, LA time. I'm in studio, I think it was Studio 2. It's where Manny has his room now at Larrabee. And that was my room for like 5 years, by the way. When I left Virginia Beach to come live in LA, that was my room for 5 years. And I'm so happy for Manny that he has that, right? So I went in there, and how we used to do tape prepping was we used to make slave reels, right? So you have kick, snare, stereo percussions, bass, stereo keys, stereo background, lead vocal, right? But the way I did it was I did like a rough mix to it to make Teddy feel it. That's why Teddy loved me so much. So Renee Moore came down that morning. He goes, who are you? I said, I'm Jean Marie. He goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm just prepping up for a slave. He goes, let me hear what you got. I said, okay, no problem. So I played it. He was like, it was Jam, because he was the co-writer for Jam. He stopped. He ran out the room. I'm like, I got fired already, man? Shit. Now, mind you, on the Michael project, I think I should have got fired about 10 times. That's a different story. All of a sudden, I see Renee Moore come down. No, it was Bruce, Renee Moore. This is how it was. Bruce, Renee Moore, Tom Russo, which was Bruce's assistant in the other room, Michael and Teddy. And Teddy got a big smile on his face. I went, okay, so I'm not in trouble. He said, do me a favor, play what you just played me. He went, 1, 2, 3, bam! He was like, they all stepped back, and Mike started doing his dancing thing right there. And I'm dancing with Michael. He goes, they turned and looked, Michael looked over, he goes, are you Italian? I said, no, I'm Croatian. so we started, talking, and Bruce was so fascinated that he goes, what do you have on the bass? I said, nothing. I just have what's on the console. I need you to take notes on that. And that's the next thing Bruce said, he goes, give Jean-Marie a room. I'll go to record 1. Give Jean-Marie all the tapes. I need you to start remixing all the stuff. And that's how it happened. So I went from not working on the Michael project and working on the Michael project. And then Bruce pulled me off the side. He said, listen, I can't give you all the mix credits that you should get because of the way it's structured. I didn't know the business end of it at that time. I said, dude, I didn't give a shit. I really didn't care. Now I was like, wow, maybe I should have pressed for it, but it doesn't really matter. People know what I did on that record anyway. So Bruce turned around and he said, I'm going to give you Dangerous as an engineering credit. I said, okay, great. He knew I didn't know what the hell was going on. But everybody that did know knew I had my hands on pretty much every Michael mix on there that Teddy did, because we had it. Because the mixes that we did for that were a little bit more different. which led us to the point when people heard Remember the Time, I became a remixer at that point. Because remember, everything was happening fast. Teddy gave me my first, I still got my first MPC from Teddy. Still have it to this day. I didn't know how to program. He said, man, let me see what you're doing. And he heard, he goes, you know how to quantize? I said, what is that? I was doing everything feel-wise. He said, you didn't quantize that? I said, no. He goes, yo, dude, let's go. And that's how we did the remix for Remember the Time.
So nothing phased you, but also when you first started, the console didn't have a patch. You didn't patch anything in. So you think from the beginning, those early days, way back at IR, when you were kind of deprived of all the accoutrements of the traditional studio, you think that stuff helped you?
Yep, absolutely. And then this is where it happened. When people start getting budgets and money, you start overthinking stuff. Well, let me try. Oh, this guy used the Pultec, then I have to use a Pultec. Well, this guy used 1176, I got to use 1176. That was the time. Now, Teddy had all that stuff in there, and I didn't use all that stuff for like the Michael stuff I started to because I was touching everything. And that's when I started learning more about what a Shep's EQ did, what a Neve did, what that did. I was more fascinated about microphones than anything else. Because I'm a big Tom Dowd fan, always have been and always will be. And his philosophy was like my philosophy. If you hear it, print it. You know what I'm saying? If it needs it, put it on there. If it doesn't, back off. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when I started doing the micro records and started seeing budgets, I started learning about finer things about engineering and about mixing. And I fell into that echelons, that upper echelons, the snobbish echelons for a good 3.5, 4 years, up until I left Teddy to come to LA. And it just doesn't feel that. And that from that point, I would have to rent out stuff and this and that. And I forgot the true meaning of what I got into the music industry for, is feeling what I'm hearing. And I was searching for something that was already there. I didn't have to go outside all the time. And listening to Andy Wallace later down the road kind of solidified the way I was thinking, because Andy Wallace would only come in with two things, an AMS reverb and I think a DMX, and that's it. And he made those great, amazing rock records that stand to the test of time to this day. So that philosophy, the less is more concept, has come into more fruition. It comes to more of a balance right now. And I think that's what keeps me sustainable and more youthful to this day, because I don't really depend on that. I depend on what's already recorded, because sometimes the producer knows what he's doing. If it feels right for him, why am I going to alter that feeling? You know what I'm saying? So that really comes into play.
How much impact does the actual room have on how you work? Like, do you have certain rooms that you really like, or certain rooms that are kind of working against you? You have certain equipment that come in or out that would change kind of like the way you feel? Because the word feel seems to be something that's coming through almost everything that you say and how you live and how you work. So talk about how the rooms make you work in terms of how they feel.
When I was younger in my career, and like when I first started out, and I remember Sigma Sound Studio did not sound like Larrabee's studio. So I got spoiled, and I thought that every room should sound like that. I did not start to understand my way of mixing. And if I had to be in a situation, that's the reason why I have cubes. And that's the reason why what I listened to, didn't make any sense, because every time, if you go to different studios, the NS10 sounded so different. And there's different power amps on that damn thing. So I decided to work on my cubes all the time, or a pair of Oratones. Well, let's just say Oratones first, the brown Oratones. I knew every studio had that, but the problem was a lot of studios did not have matching pairs. And a lot of studios, one of them is ripped up and they only use mono. So I had to buy a pair that I always took with me. And then I started understanding what power amps worked better for those Oratones. And at that time, Radio Shack was still open. So anytime I need a pair of throwaways, I would go to get those realistic speakers that acted like oratones, and they gave me a little bit more low end extension because I hit my shit hard when I mix. You can tell like you can't. I had that happen to me last night. There's this. We were at East West Studios, and the assistant saying, "Wait a minute, how the hell are you hitting that damn thing so hard and you're not breaking the speakers?" The Yamahas popped before my speakers, and I haven't changed the damn speakers in about 3 or 4 years. That's why. That's where I can go to any room and get the best out of the room. It does play a major part. I think the pandemic really kind of showed that I kind of altered my rooms the way I want it to be. Working in this philosophy brought the things that I need in a room, and I'll explain to you a little bit more about it. When we first started out doing music, you, me, anybody here, we started in the bedroom. There was no acoustical treatment. So when you go to a studio, you think that is supposed to be that room. That's the room. All of a sudden, you leave the room. They say, "Oh, this sounds like bullshit. It sounded better than my thing at the house sounded better." That always came up. That always came up. That always came up. I said, okay. So I try to make the studio like my bedroom. And every room that every room after Babyface's room, which to me was probably one of the best rooms I ever worked in, came to fruition. I also understood what I liked and what I didn't like about consoles, what I liked and what I didn't like about rooms. When we did the Robin Thicke record, Thicke, this is how it all started, how my concept of room started changing. That Robin Thicke record is probably one of the best works I've done, and we did that at his house on a euphonics board. I heard it last night. It was fat as hell. It was amazing. You know what I'm saying? It was absolutely amazing. That I said, so wait a minute, what's the difference? Then I went back to Babyface's room, and everything started sounding thin. That's when I realized, even though Babyface's J-board is one of a kind, I didn't like the J-board sound. I didn't like certain console sounds. When I started working as riffraff for other producers, I remember I was talking to Pete Farmer, and Pete said, "Yo, man, your mixes up at Oz, up in my studio up here, when I had it, is better than the mixes that you did at Babyface's spot." So then I started understanding the concept that too much electronics cleans up everything. Then when we started going inside the box versus spreading it out, there's a significant sound difference when you work inside the box versus just spreading it out. A lot of people say it sounds clean. You know, it's just that we're at a time tunnel right now where our ears are getting used to certain things, and we have to respect that rather than go against it. Now, if there's an artist, like when we did Often, I spread that on the SSL console using a different concept, using the hybrid concept. I tried to do that on the Tiger mixes, and the producer wasn't feeling it, even though he said, I wanted that Often mix. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people don't know what they want, something that's not theirs. Often was special. Your song is special. So now each room, each DAW, each thing comes into play. So when it comes down to room, there's one thing that stayed constant with me: my cubes. I can go into any room, in any environment, and get the best thing out of it. But I also hear my mistakes with those cubes. So if you find something, now mind you, I don't believe in powered speakers, because a lot of times when you have self-powered speakers, they have a compressor on it. So you're not really getting the maximum sound. Like I use on my cubes, I use a Bryson 4B. People think I'm crazy, but that's where I can hear the clarity. I can hear the bottom end. When I put on those Yamaha HS5s or whatever, you think you think you have the shit. All of a sudden you come out, it's either sound like this or there's no bottom end, because there's a facade. There's that low extension that's not really there. So that's why I like paper cones versus polypropylene cones. There's a lot of things that come into play when it comes down to rooms. Now, my room in North Hollywood, because budgets are different, And I don't like to gank the artist too much. I'd rather work in my room in North Hollywood. It's a little different. Yeah, I have I have the old Dr. Dre. We got the Dr. Dre AWS, which is a little modified. I don't really use it as much as I used to because that's not giving me the sound that I want and the headroom that I need. And ever since the pandemic, I built the room at the house, and that's now my Atmos room. So it's kind of interesting, It's like, but it all develops in how you hear things, and use your common sense. If the room doesn't sound right, pick out what you think needs to happen. If you need to put like a blanket back there, or if you're in a major facility, there's some gobos. Put some gobos in the back to tighten up the room if you want to. That's what people tend to forget. Even if you're going through the monitor section of an SSL-J board, it's going to color the sound because it's going to alter the way you think, the way you hear. I like pure things. If I hit a Neve, that's a lot better, like an old Neve or an old SSL, totally different vibe.
So you moved to Los Angeles and you start working there. Is that where you started working with Darkchild, Rodney Jerkins?
That's a story in itself. I met Rodney at Enterprise, and he was using one of my closest friends, Dexter Simmons, as the mixer and engineer. And I go to this and say, "Oh, you're Rodney Jerkins." He said, "Yeah." Like that New Jersey app, yeah. I said, "I'm Jean-Marie Horvat." And his eyes popped out. He said, "I've been trying to look for you for years. You're Teddy's guy." And that's how it happened. And we started working.
And you did, there's a song that everybody loves. And I got to get your story on this one. Mm-hmm. Say My Name, Say My Name, Say My Name. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that record. How did that happen? Did you do the mix on that? And how did that happen?
How it happened was Rodney would use me or Dexter, and he would depend on what vibe he was looking for. Say My Name came about when Rodney was actually still doing the Invincible record. So we were doing all that, and Harvey had a lot to. Harvey Mason Jr. had to do a lot with that era of sound as well. But they made a great team, between him, Lauren Dawson, the late great LaShawn Daniels, Freddie. That was a team. That was a really good team. The Darkchild camp was killing it back then, and I was part of that camp. It was an amazing experience. The mix was really like Rodney had to go and rechange the drums because he was trying to do certain things, and he felt no, he wanted to keep it driving, and that's how Say My Name came out the way it was. And like the breakdowns that say yeah, that wasn't there. There was like all editing. That's when we started incorporating Pro Tools and SSL together, because Harvey was a mastermind at I've never seen anybody work in Pro Tools like that. Remember, Harvey was part of that whole invention of that auto-tune share effect. That's Harvey Mason Jr. And Harvey was killing it. I mean, he was doing stuff that I said, God, I was slow compared to what Harvey was. Like, he was amazing. So Harvey would whip up that edit in like 2.2 seconds. He was like in and out. And the mix was like that. And Ronnie came in, did his Darkchild thing, and I didn't meet the girls. I didn't meet Beyonce till years later. A very sweet person. And I had a great time, meeting her and dealing with her. But I think the true genius is that, that mix came about with just me and Rodney. It was amazing. It was just it was a feel good thing. Rodney said, drop it. He made one or two comments. He loved all my drops in it because, a lot of people knew me for my drops, not just also the EQing portion to make it sonically sound good. It was the drops, and that's what made it feel good. You know what I'm saying? So Rodney loved all the drops that we did. He added his couple in there. He took a couple out and made the song flow. But the concept was, it was quick. We didn't have that much time to think. You know what I'm saying? It's just like the same thing that happened with Privacy, with the Michael Jackson stuff. We didn't have that much time to think because I didn't use that much outboard gear. I used the desk. on privacy because my gear didn't show up. The same thing that happened with Say My Name. We started utilizing more Pro Tools plugins because at that time, running automation from Pro Tools and SSL to catch up with that was off by a little bit. So all the drops are off. So what me and Harvey decided to do was I do my field drops. This is because we didn't have a controller yet. And then when it was off, I knew it was, and we did edits. So it matches up the automation. And then we just let it go.
Now, do you think that your sort of musical mind and your musical approach, and that's where a lot of these drops come from, because you think more like a musician, or at least as much as a musician that as an engineer. Do you think this has also helped you with your engineering and with your production?
Well, that's why I say I'm not an engineer. I'm a mixer, but I'm a musician first. You know what I'm saying? That's why I tell people I'm not an engineer. I just know what I like to hear. An engineer to me is somebody that actually develops, makes the products. I think what we are, we're just a bunch of musicians that want to hear things differently. You know what I'm saying? That's what mixers are. Like I was telling you a story before we started the interview, is that last night, 2 nights ago, I went to East West Studios and I was explaining my philosophy on cutting live drums. And the guy, Chad, was like, oh my God, dude, this thing sounds amazing. And having the time to say, I don't like something instead of rushing the gig, you know what I'm saying? So basically, y'all, what we were talking about is like I was doing drums at East West Studios, probably one of the best drum rooms around. Studio 2. Candace Stewart is the most loveliest people. We have a lot of things going on there, like a lot of old school stuff. So when people know I'm coming, oh, this is a hip hop guy. He don't know shit. He's a mixer. He don't know shit. And Candace goes, well, Chad goes, well, isn't he a mixer? He goes, yeah, just trust Jean-Marie. You're going to really enjoy the session. So I brought my cubes, and I said, listen, y'all, understand, trust somebody that knows where the drums should go in a certain room. So we did that. But these are the ones that I wanted. So he relatively chose the mics that I would choose, a 421, a FET on the kick drum, a 57 on the snare, and then he put a 441 underneath, which was cool. KM84 on the hi-hat. Tom mics, I'm going to leave last. We used Pro J's C12s over the heads. Amazing. But my sound was an 87 above the drummer, right? Above the drummer. That's how I started first. And he was shocked. Then I started with the overheads. Then I hit the room mics. Then I hit the tom mics. That's where my ego went away. I said, I like everything. I turned off the toms. I went to the kick and the snare. Well, snare and kick. Went back to the toms. I said, dude, I'm not really feeling the toms. Let's get rid of those 421s. Pro J goes like this. How about these 98s? I went, what the hell is that? The best tom sounds I've ever got. The best tom sounds. As soon as we put that in there, me and Chad looked at it, goes, we're done. Let's go. Let's start the session. That was in 1 hour. Drum sounds were done in 1 hour. Less than an hour, really. The only reason I took an hour, we had to take all the drums, take the 421s off and put it in there. And then we talked about the guitars, like we had to cut drums and guitars on these songs for this guy named Conrad Sewell. Really, really nice. And the guitar player is Zane Carney. And my concept of cutting guitars is a little different than most. I like the meat and potatoes is not the ones that's on the cones. The meat and potatoes is the 3 to 4 feet away from the amp. That got us the guitar tone. The first thing the guitar player said, as well as the drummer saying, yo, those drums sound just as good as it was outside, because a lot of drummers don't like when they go in the studio, it sounds too confined. He goes, yo, you got that thing matched up perfectly. It's that overhead thing. Now the guitar players come, he goes, yo, why is it, I walk out of the room and I walk back in the room just to hear the guitar tone. He says, they're the same. I said, because I'm listening to it from a listener's point of view, not an engineer's point of view. It's not about you. It's about for the listeners. Does that feel good? And the first thing the guitar player goes, yo, that feels really nice, Sean. I'm hearing all the notes. I'm hearing what I'm hearing. That makes a session, when you have session cats, it makes the session roll so much quicker. You know what I'm saying? Because now the artist, the engineer, the producer, and me, when I say engineers, y'all, your assistant is your engineer because you need to trust him. You're basically like a talk show host or like a host of a game show, making sure everybody's okay. You know what I'm saying? And that is what we accomplish. So when you're getting tones like that, it really helps. It really, you step away and say something's wrong instead of I got to make this shit work. I got to put this in there because this is what I know. This is what I know. Step away. Maybe try a different time. Like maybe try a different concept. It's the same thing like when we try to do like the Say My Name stuff. We went with a different concept. We tried to do different things. We used the musician's aspect. And that's why I think Rodney really loved working with me and Dexter so much, because we didn't come from a snobbish engineering point of view. Dexter Simmons is probably one of my, I love him so much, but he's probably one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. This dude knows things. He knows the intricacy of everything. I'm not that gifted like he is. You take this frequency and it does this bit splitting. I was like, nah, dude. Does the shit feel good? Does the shit sound right? That's me. Dexter's the opposite way. But then Dexter takes away all that education because he wants to know everything about the plug-in or the equipment that he's using. And then he goes into his musician role. Remember, a lot of people did not know that was Dexter Simmons doing all the talk boxes for the stuff that he did with Rodney. That was Dexter doing the talk box stuff. He bad, man.
Yeah. So now tell me something. When you're in this age of computers, MIDI, samples, a lot of people never even, never had to deal with bleed. Now, when you're recording drums, though, live drums, you got bleed everywhere. How do you make bleed work for you?
It's very simple. It's an acoustical instrument. It's not a friggin' drum machine. So sometimes, you have to use your ears. If you're cutting it, you have to use your ears to make sure, am I getting enough gain staging so it doesn't overbleed? So when I put a EQ or a compressor on it, it doesn't jump out all the unnecessary cueing. So it's called microphone technique. But mind you, I started from a drummer's perspective to get my sound from the contact mic. I didn't go contact mic first. I went from a drummer's perspective, which is the overhead mic like this, because that's him playing the drums. If I got that sumbitch sounding right, everything comes to play. So if all else fails, I bring up that one mono track and all of a sudden, this is an acoustical instrument. It's not pad 1, pad 2, pad 3. It's a feel thing. The sumbitch feel good. Hell yeah, it feels good. Y'all need more snare. Bring up the contact mic.
Now, I'm going to talk about a few, these are standard things that everybody deals with. And I'm just going to get your sort of philosophy on these elements of mixing, right? Now, reverb. What's the Jean-Marie approach to reverb? And, you got the vocals. Do they have their own reverb? Do you have the background vocals? Do you have the drums on its own reverb? Do you share? I mean, how do you manage reverb? Do you use it on a bus? Do you ever use it as an insert? Give me the kind of Jean-Marie approach to reverb.
Okay, so this is where the template comes in for people's template. I don't have one. I have something that I start off with, but each DAW sounds different. But I do go for my traditional sound. Like, I stole this idea from Neil Giraldi, Pat Benatar's husband. One of my reverb sends is a mono 140 plate with a 125 pre-delay. So a lot of people says, yo, I feel the reverb, but nowadays everybody wettens it up because they're so used to the demo mixes. But before, like people say, yo, Jean-Marie's vocals have reverb, but I don't hear it. It's because of that 125 pre-delay. So you feel it in the back end. Now, to that respect, I usually have 4 to 5 different reverbs going at the same time. And then I like more delays than reverb. That's always been my illusion. And also, I do a lot of intricate things that I did with James Fauntleroy stuff. I would use it more as like a print effect type thing, but I'm not really printing it. I'm using it, and instead of like going through a bus, I use the whole goddamn track as a feed. You know what I'm saying? Like an output that hits different things, and I trigger off different sounds to make it go like this, certain spots. You know what I'm saying? But then it depends on what song I'm doing. If he wants to go futuristic, then I could do that stuff. And this is where the production comes out of it. See, I don't think I consider myself as an engineer, more so as an extra hand to a producer to get something that he didn't hear or get something that he wanted and he couldn't figure it out. So the thing that really kind of sets a lot of things apart is when to put reverb on things and when not to put reverb on things. So when it comes down to, I don't do a lot of drum reverb. I don't. I try not to. And here's my philosophy. If the lead vocals got reverb, them background vocals are going to have reverb because of the travel of the lead vocal. So everything doesn't have to have reverb on it. I might have a delay going like this, or some type of harmonizer to make it sound wider. But if the lead is a little bit more dry, then I can go a little bit more wetter because it gives you that depth of feel. To me, it's like, I think it should sound great before you put anything on it.
You got to tell me about your delays because your delays are also, very, I know people that work with you. And what could you tell us about your kind of approach to delay? Because you love delays.
I like delays feeling like they're never ending, but they end at some point, if that makes any sense. So I might have, so one of my delay trickery is that you get a stereo delay, right? This can either be a bus feed or it can be a full feed, depending on what you want. One side gets a quarter note, the other side gets an eighth note, right? Put another delay in there. The side that you had a quarter note, you put an eighth note. The other side gets a quarter note. So now you got this shimmer going on, right? So now you got this thing going like this. Then you get a dotted triplet on top of that as another synth. So that has its own thing. You put that way back, almost see if you have an atmospheric type of vibe. So when the vocal comes in, it's like, it's almost like there's a choir going on without feeling it. So now it's up front in the mix. Remember, EQs are just like effects. Delays are just like EQs. They bring out the frequencies when you set it in the mix right. Really simple.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a big phaser and flanger fan. Like, I have a lot of phasing and flanging going on my vocals, but you don't hear it.
And what do you think the phases and the flanges, what do they contribute to the sound of the vocal?
It makes to get the throat out a little bit, especially if you get the right, like if you use a Mutron biphaser in waves, if you use the Mutron biphaser, I'm giving you my little tricks. Start using the returns, which is basically the mix and the feedback, as almost like an EQ thing, so you can feel this sexiness come out of the vocal. Those are my little tricks, because that's how I used to do it with the Publisan. I used to do that with the Publisan. Oh my God, everybody used to hate me when I used to do like board mixes. I had pretty much at that time, because we didn't have plugins, 40 PCM 42s. Then I had the TC Electronics because that has a sexy thing going on there. Then I had this other primetime delay going on. The snares that back in the day I used to have, and I showed this to Dave, on Sends 1 and 2, I would have two SPX 90s doing a phase reverb thing, and that would be my snare sound. I showed that to Dave. He couldn't believe that one. and that would be up like I had the pan right up the middle, and it was like all of a sudden you hear this pop. He goes, "That's how you get the Teddy snare." I said, "Yep, that's how I got the Teddy snare."
Yamaha SPX90, huh?
Yeah, man. I
Amazing
wish.
thing.
Does anybody make a plugin for that? I think they do. I'm not too
No,
sure.
no, man. Nobody's done that. That was the most popular little box in the world back in those days.
Oh my God, I fell in love with the Roland iCloud thing because it has all the soft synths that I need, like from the analog box. And everybody says, "Oh, analog's this, analog's that." I said, "You know what? At this point in time, if that makes you feel good, then go buy the analog stuff." You know, I'd rather see a live drum kit than the analog synth because the technology is so ahead of the curve right now. Our computers are getting so much faster and so much better that these plugins sound amazing. Really, really do.
Yeah. But there is no SPX90 yet. That's an idea for
No,
whoever's watching.
yeah, SPX90 and
Yamaha
PC.
SPX90. Go get
There's
that.
one company that's actually doing a Lang EQ, which someone needs to do that one, and a real 160 XT. Those are the two
Nobody's
things I
done a
want.
160 XT either. There again,
Didn't
you guys
Yamaha
watching
do
out
one?
there. Huh?
Didn't Yamaha do one? Steinberg, didn't they do one?
I don't think so. I'm up
Yeah,
on this stuff,
160.
man. I don't believe so. Well, DBX 160 would be amazing.
Yeah,
160X.
yeah.
Now tell me about compression for vocals. Do you compress the vocals on the way in?
It really depends. It depends on the singer. If the singer doesn't have a good dynamic control on the microphone, yes. And my go-to compression back then was 1176 until distressors came into my life. That would be a distressor. So now we're dealing with plugins these days. I decided to try to track vocals this particular way. I would put a distressor on the input, into the DAW, which is basically a plugin because it stays consistent. And then I would track that and get that tone because the mic and the mic pre is really going to give me what I really need. And I've been dealing with Slate a lot. Like the Slate microphones are phenomenal. I was really blown away with that. Really, really blown away with that.
Now you got to
So
explain to people watching what is a distressor.
a distressor is to me is the 1176 of our time. It was the Yuri 1176, right? The distressor is it's the Swiss Army knife of compression. You can use it on kick drums. You can use it on snares. You definitely can do it on vocals. I use the arouser, which is basically a fatso, which is same from the same guy, a fatso and the distressor put together as one. That is amazing. Kids use 4-to-1 compression ratio on the vocals. You'll thank me later when you mix it.
Now saturation. I know you use a lot of saturation because you already told us you use some of it on your 808s on the second channel over here. Do you throw some of that on vocals? I'm sure you do.
No. Yes. No. Kind of. It depends on the vocal. If it's cut like bullshit, then yeah, I don't do it. But if it's like too clean, I definitely put some grit into it. I make it sound like a tape machine.
So what's the purpose of using saturation? Because that's distortion.
Yeah, but it also could be like a filtering effect to get the warmth out of it because there's different harmonics and distortion that like, obviously everybody knows that, but there's also that growl that you can filter in to the vocal to make it sound bigger and have more body to it, less top end. It depends on how you hit the saturation of it. It's not like tape machine that you can play around with a couple plugins. I'm not talking about a distortion pedal. I'm talking about a saturator, like a decapitator or something like that. You try it on the source itself. If not, go through like a parallel thing and see if that will help you out with your vocal to get the body of the vocal. Remember, it's about the song, not about the saturation. But the saturation can get you to the promised land a lot quicker, and you're only a mute away. That's what I tell people. I don't like that. Well, why don't you give me a chance to put it in there? It's only a mute away. That's why I don't like a lot of people in my room because everybody thinks they're like the modern day warrior when they come to mixing, and they have no clue what the hell's going on because they're not hearing what I'm hearing. They're hearing what they heard. If that's the case, then you go with your demo. But obviously that thing sounded like bullshit. That's why you're here.
Mm-hmm. Now, tell me, with your mixing, what tends to go on an insert? What tends to go on a sub? What tends to go on a master bus in a Jean-Marie world?
I think everything goes on an insert for me until I need a little bit more control. Because when it's on an insert, it's there to stay for the majority thing. It's part of the sound source. When it comes down to like a float or a type of side compression or bus compression or wherewithal mix, is that it depends on how much control I want. Nah, I don't like that. I'm gonna put that on saying, oh, that feels better. You know what I'm saying? When it comes down to the master bus, I don't compress my master bus. I compress within the mix, if that makes any sense. So I have different things, like what I was known for when it came down to the J boards, because I couldn't stand the sound of that console. I love SSL. I just didn't like the J board sound. I like the K board better. It has that different type of, it hits differently. So what I did is they had the ABC buses, right? So what I would do is get my mix up and then take all the drums and go to the A bus and bring it up to the console. And then I would take all the music stuff and put into the B bus, and that would go up in the console. It was the A, B, C master bus returns would come up on the console. The vocals and then the lead vocals would have that. So I'm basically compressing within the mix. That's how we did Say My Name. And that's why Say My Name's mix came out so well, because that concept came to the fact, because I heard it too clean. Because if you hit the J board a certain way, you get this sound. I didn't like that. So a lot of people were fascinated that all my levels were down low, but yet it sounded humongous. So that's what I do within the realms of Pro Tools, Nuendo, and Logic for that most. Logic has a certain sound that I really, really love. Nuendo, I just recently started getting into because of working with Pro J, Robin Thicke's guy, and that's an amazing program. It's an amazing program, especially when it comes down to the Atmos world. And I'm also a Pro Tools guy, but sometimes I like to switch around a little bit, give everybody a curveball once in a while.
One thing I know, and I know this for a fact, Jean-Marie, you mix loud. What do you do to protect your hearing?
Earplugs. And I got more mature as I got older. What people didn't understand when I was listening to the big speakers, I just wanted to feel it. You guys never knew I put earplugs in my ear. Mishka was the first person to understand. He goes, "Do you have earplugs?" I said, "Because yeah, because brother, I always thought that you always had." I said, "No, man, I put earplugs in my ear. Always had."
Okay, perfect. And to all those people out there that mix loud without earplugs, what do you say to them?
Start using them, man, because you really what you're really hearing up there is just like a club feel. So you really want the low end. It's the top end that's really going to kill you. So protect your ears. But that's why I tell people 95 to 96% of my tones come from my cubes. That's where the bottom end comes from.
When you're mixing, you got another guy behind you called a mastering engineer.
Mm-hmm.
How does that influence how you mix and your levels and what you do and what you give to him?
Well, I like to use one person that I trust immensely. He's probably one of the best I've ever worked with, and everybody uses him. His name is Dave Kutch. He actually listens to your mixes versus to throwing stuff on there. And I'm going to leave some mastering places out of there. A lot of times mastering guys use the last setup that they had, like a template. And that template, because it worked on X, Y stuff, is not going to work on my shit, because my low end differential is way different from anybody else's. You see what I'm saying? So it's like I give a lot of ass to the mastering guy because they can shave it. A lot of these mixes that I'm hearing don't have that much ass. So they depend on the mastering guy to basically finish up the mix on some of these mixer stuff. I heard a couple of them. It sounds terrible. Some of these young cats don't know what they're missing because they're not hearing it properly. That's my problem. It's like I really wish I could take a bunch of these young up and coming mixers and really change their way of thinking, because they can really kill the game. And I have no problem doing that, because you have to pay it forward. Teddy did it for me. I might want to do it for everybody else. I can give you all my, I tell people, learn from my mistakes. If you don't want to, that's up to you. But I'm just making suggestions. I think a lot of times these, like, when you go to these schools, they think that automatically, they think that they're going to be mixing and engineering and all of that. They need to learn about certain things. And if I can help them rekindle their ear a little bit, it'll be amazing. Like, there's a handful that I work with at the studio that I work out of. I have a little room down in North Hollywood, and Atlantic's in the other rooms. Devin Brown, another person that actually wanted to learn how to rethink his way of listening, because he can never mix like me, and I can never mix like him. Stanley Springer, another kid that is up on his way. Um, uh, my assistant Jerry, Jerry Shields, he's learning, because he's like saying, "Yo, they never taught us this in school," and it's really sad, because yes, you need to have a curriculum, but you also need to teach them the fundamentals. And sometimes engineers saying, "Well, I don't want to give all my secrets." What secrets? What is it? It's an EQ. It's a compressor. If you teach somebody to rethink the way they're listening, to build our music community. Our music community sucks. It's all or nothing. And especially in the hip hop community, we should be more like brothers and sisters rather than enemies and trying to get everybody else's stuff. Everything is like, oh, he got my mix. No, man. It's just like he knows somebody. That's how it works, man. It's like all friends and friends. But at some point, your friend's gonna mess you up because he doesn't know what the hell they're doing. So you're gonna have to call me or call someone that I taught. Like Fabian's one of my kids. Manny was one of my guys. I don't find any. I'm so happy about my friends that they're succeeding, because I was part of their life. They're part of my life.
You got to talk to me about Powerglide, because that was a song that you didn't engineer. You produced, you wrote, and you wrote it with Marley Marl. Now, tell me a little bit about that story. How did that happen?
Yeah, Molly Mall was introduced to me by Ghazi from Empire, and I was doing some mixes for Empire, and he said, "Hey, look, man, do you mind doing this thing for Molly Mall?" And Molly Mall did not know who I was. A lot of people don't know. And he goes, yeah, I heard a lot of things about you. You did Michael Jackson. And I was, all right, great. And then all of a sudden, this name Claudio Aquino goes up to, he goes, yeah, I'm working with Jean Marie. He goes, this Jean Marie? You working with Jean Marie? He goes, yeah. He goes, this, yeah, he's a dope mixer, man. He's a dope engineer. He goes, this. He goes, have you heard his writing and production? He writes and produces? This is what Molly said. He goes, dude, he's like 10 years ahead of everybody. He's different. He's way different. He's like, I think the best suggestion was Jean Marie is like a cross between Quincy Jones and Frank Zappa when it comes down to sounds. He's crazy. He does crazy shit. So he said, send me your beats. Now, mind you, I'm a little ahead of everybody. And he goes, yo, I like this, but this is not what's everybody's cracking. I said, look, if you want a Metro Boomin beat, I got his number from somebody. Get him. If you want, I need it to sound like this. I said, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to copy somebody's shit. Not for a paycheck. Because that's what we're doing it for, is a paycheck. I'm not going to do that. The only way the music's going to change, if we change the flavor of the music and have some type of stability. So Molly Mall was doing something with Sway Lee. He said, Jean, Sway Lee came up with a suggestion. He wants to flip side to side from 3-6 Mafia. I said, look, I'll do it if I can do it my way. And it wasn't a sample. It wasn't even exactly like the song, even though they said that they got writing credit for it, what they shouldn't have. That was some bullshit. That was Molly Mall talking to Paul, DJ Paul, saying that, he wanted to bring Paul in there because Molly Mall is a good guy. But we didn't like what Paul did. So long story short, he asked me to do it. Sway Lee loved the vibe. He said, yo, this thing is sick. Who did this? He goes, one of my guys. That's how it happened. I sent it to him in the afternoon. Sway Lee came from the club, did the vocals. All of a sudden, We got the song going. I said, "Oh wow!" Didn't think nothing of it, right? And I didn't think I was going to get credit for it, right? That's what Molly Mall said. He goes, "This Jean, can you do your thing on this?" I said, "Absolutely." So I started doing my drops, doing my arrangements, doing all that stuff. He said, "Yo, Sway really likes what you did." So they went to a mixer, and they didn't like what the mixer did, so they wanted to get as close as possible to what we did. And the mixer is actually Jason Joshua. And I know Jason for many, many years. So there was a lot of things that was incorporated because I wanted to make it easy for um, Jason to mix it, and then Mike Will had to put his touches. I think he added something in there. I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure what is going on, but that's how it happened. And I really wanted to do more production at that time because I wanted to cultivate. I wanted to change our community, and I'm trying to change it as a mixer, but I can do more as a producer, songwriter. And mind you, I was taught by the best songwriters, by Babyface. I was ghosting for him. I was ghosting for a lot of people. I was ghosting for the underdogs. I mean, a lot of those things that we did with Tyrese, that was part of my programming, part of my expertise. And even when it comes down to mixing, when it comes down to different arrangements, I did all that stuff. Never got credited for it, but that didn't bother me so much. But now, as I get older, I was like, you know what? It's time to change the page a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Now, what did you use to make to do your thing, or to make those beats, or to make those instruments?
On Powerglide, we started off using the Machina because what had happened was I became a musical snob. And my wife said, "Look, if you really want to know something, why don't you ask your son what he thinks?" And I played him something that I did with Babyface a long time ago. He said, "Daddy, that's what's hot." I said, "All that," brr, brr, brr. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I did that in 2002, 2003. The triplets and all of that stuff. Basically, was techno slowed down a little bit." And circa now, fast forward, I did that shit years ago. So that brought me to the concept of I had too much in front of me. So Gianni, my son Gianni, changed my way of thinking because I said, you know what? Let me show respect to these young entrepreneurs, these young soundsmiths, these young songwriters. And I said, okay, let's just do this. Take away all my analog stuff, take everything away. Native Instruments gave me Machina, and I started doing beats that way. I did. Now, mind you, I thought I needed to spend more time on a song. Baby, I came in there. It felt like I was doing Remember the Time again. I did my drums. I hated the drum sounds that were out there. So I would spend like almost 6 months making drum sounds, which I still use to this day. And I was like, my 808s, everybody's like saying, yo, why is your drums hitting so hard? I made them. I cultivated them. I calculated them stuffs, Did the same thing when we made the drum sounds for Dangerous. Half those drum sounds we made. Like Bruce Woodine came up with the 808 idea by using a water bottle and getting the 5-gallon Sparkles water bottle to get the 808 tone. We did so much to it. Remember, it's soundsmithing. So I did my own soundsmithing, get my own stuff, and that's how it all happened. I kept it simple, and I used that. I did the drag and drop method into Logic. That's when I started doing more like, if I was younger again, songwriting, arranging. And then I started adding different things, like different effects and stuff like that. It's just really getting into a different world, almost like how Frank Zappa did. He took something from nothing and made it amazing by just altering different frequencies, using plugins instead of pedals. I use that musical sensibility of saying, well, why don't we just print it? Because every time the plugin doesn't play back the right way. So I printed all my plugins. So I can't change it, but I could change the arrangement of it. It's like, oh, we'll fix it. We'll fix it. We'll fix it. No, man, print that shit. Always print it.
Now, what was it like to watch Gianni listen to it?
Okay, so I still remember this. He was a freshman at high school. He went to his first high school dance, right? And I went to pick him up, and I got the first draft of Powerglide. Now, mind you, he's a Rae Sremmurd fan, and he knew I was working with Molly Mall, and I said, okay. So I popped in. This is before it came out, like almost 6-7 months before it came out. Went to pick him up, cranked it up. I said, Gianni, I work with Marley Marl. He goes, yeah, how's he doing? I said, well, there was a writer that wrote to this. Tell me what you think. He goes, it goes, Dad, that's you all day. I love that, Dad, you know? And he goes, right? And then, well, then, no, coasting up. No, well, coasting. You know, he goes, what do you think about that guy? He goes, wow, Dad, he really sounds like Sway Lee. I said, yeah, man, he really does, huh? He goes, yeah. He goes, what do you like about it? Yo, that guy really sounds just like Sway Lee. Could be like his brother, right? You know? I said, Gianni, that is Sway Lee. He went, no way. And I looked at him. I said, I love you, son, because it's because of you I did this song. And it was Powerglide. And that's, you know, and I give credit to my A&R, which is my son. Now my daughter's my A&R now too. So I don't listen to A&R people no more because they don't know what they're talking about. They just want yesterday's news. It's the kids that tell me what they want. The artist tells me what they want. Certain artists get caught up in that thing like, I want the same thing like she has. And I think that's why I love Doja Cat so much, because Doja Cat has her own sound. And now everybody and their mother wants a Doja Cat song. Or someone like Ariana Grande, which I love Victoria. Victoria is one of her main writers. Oh, I want a Victoria track. I said, you know what? Why don't you get somebody and cultivate your sound? I'm not taking anything out of anybody else's pocket, but stop chasing something that somebody already's done and really work with some other people. And then you get the ones that think that they're being something different, but there's no song structure. You know, it's like, yo, that's hot. I said, that's garbage. You know, yo, that's hot. That's hot. Why? It's hot because it's different? No, it's hot because it's like you want it to be different. You know, it's like, I think still to this day, if I play a Doobie Brothers track, a Marvin Gaye track, a Fleetwood Mac track to young kids, or a Pink Floyd track, some of these young kids know that, they would love it. They do. They still do love it. If I put Ain't No Mountain High Enough, every young kid knows that. That's called songwriting. And I think that's what's being missed. And I think, you know, with the artist that I'm working with right now, her name is Alexa Siwi, LCW, but she's going by Siwi. We're trying to figure out that portion of it. But she's doing neoclassic soul. She wants to do it. She's 21 years old. She was an ex-pro surfer. She's an island girl. She's always in Jamaica. Like she's going to Panama. She's like, she's so free spirited. And I think that's what we need in our music community. She's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. She's part Egyptian, part Jamaican, and I think she's part Peruvian and El Salvadorian. She's an island girl. Everything's just like, and her concept and her songwriting. She goes, "Oh, we need to get this song." And I said, "Why? No one's going to write like you." She's amazing. So that, you know, we're trying to build our community up, you know, and just bring a tightness to it. Our community sucks. It really sucks. The country community has a better music community.
So tell me about working on Price Tag with Jessie J.
I was asked by Wendy Goldstein, a good friend of mine, to, you know, she was working at I think Capitol at that time, and she left Capitol to go work for Republic, it's an amazing label, and she asked me to do a mix for Jessie J, which we did, and there was another mixer that was supposed to do it, and they loved what I did, and that's how it happened. I just brought the energy, and the energy was so wonderful. But she's such an amazing vocalist. I was working with Justin Timberlake at that time, and he told me about Jessie J, how crazy vocal she is, and she's an amazing songwriter. You know, she wrote "Party in the USA." I didn't even know that, and I heard her version of "Party USA." It was amazing. Now Miley Cyrus killed it as well, but it's so funny how songwriters that are singers, they try to interpret so much. You know what I'm saying? It was an amazing experience. Needless to say, that was a really good record. And I worked with Oak on a couple of things as well, the producer Oak, and I love Oak.
Another one of the great mixes you've done, Jean-Marie, is Jenny from the Block with J-Lo. Tell me a little bit about that.
That was an interesting mix. At that time, Gianni was born, actually. So that's how far back we're going to go with this. And the funny thing about it is I was asked to do it. And this is why I tell people to print their files, okay? They lost the files for Jenny on the Block. And Troy Oliver did it. And I guess something happened to the computer. And they said, "Oh, man, we got to redo the whole thing." I said, no. Don't worry about it. Just give me the 2-track. I'll take care of it. They said, "What?" I said, "Give me the 2-track and I'll take care of it." So Bruce Wedine was working with J-Lo in the other room. And Corey Rooney was the A&R person on this. Troy Oliver, they were all sweating. And, you know, Corey's really a stickler about stuff. He goes, "You going to try to tell me you're going to flip that 2-track to sound like a mix?" I said, "Yeah." "Show me." I said, "All right." So what I did is we opened up the 2-track session, the session with all the vocals, and I started chopping away. And then I started adding my kicks and snares, and his face dropped. And that was Jenny on the Block.
Wow. Now, how long does it take to do that?
The chop thing, because I don't really add the kicks and snares until I have to. So basically, what I did do is did a nice overall clean mix of it, and then take the 2-track of that, filter out all the top end, so I just get the bottom end of it, and then I quicked out the top and the bottom to get the mid range, so I get the width of it, and then I would get another one, split both sides, so be one mono side one and the other side be left with, so they're up the middle, and I would chop the kick and snare with gates. And if that didn't work, I would put a kick and snare, leaving the essence of the feel on that mid-range track. So now I have like 8 tracks, like 3 stereo and 2 mono tracks, one left, one right. And that's how I started with Jenny on the Block. And the most important thing is obviously the vocal.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. I know the last song I want to talk about is Beautiful Liar. You also worked on that, which is a great song and a great performance. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Beyonce, Max Goose campaigned for me to do the mix, and there was just 2 mixes of it. The production team they were great. They were a Denmark production team. I forgot the name. Oh my God, they're gonna kill me. I was so mad that I couldn't get any more work from them though, because I know they always used Phil Tan. I got lucky to do this one because Phil was busy. I'll think of the name of the production team. They did an amazing job. And Shakira also produced on that. So there was just 2 mixes. Beyonce really loved my mix more. Although we had to split the mix credit, you know, that experience was amazing because Beyonce campaigned for me. He goes, "Listen, I know you use this guy to Shakira, but this is what we need to have." And that's how I got to do Beautiful Liar. And it was, it was beautiful. I think Solange had to do a lot of the writing on that too. That's one person I would love to work with.
Jean-Marie, you've had an amazing career, man. When you look back on it, what do you think? Like, what goes through your mind? You've done so much. You came in so fast. A little bit of luck, a little bit of fortunate. A lot of luck. Had some fortunate experiences, but you also had a personality, and you never really. I don't know. You didn't compromise too much. But what do you think?
I'm probably one of the luckiest men in the world. I could always talk about the negative, but without the negative, there's no positive. So it was beautiful. I just wish I had known a couple things differently before I got married. And I'll explain why. I was so busy hustling. And then I had that hippie vibe where I didn't want to work so much, where I felt that maybe I should have been more in an executive role so I can change a few things now. But I'm looking at my career and I said, you know, I'm totally blessed. I'm happy. And I look back, I'm like thinking, I never wavered. I stood my belief. I didn't screw anybody over. Like there's a thing that I have to bring up that's really important to me right now. And I bring this up every year and I'm going to read it to you. Uh, it's from Hunter Thompson and it's the quotes. And one of the quotes is the music industry, music business. This is what I read every year. The music business is a cruel and shallow, money-trenched and long plastic hallways where thieves and pimps run free. The good men die like dogs. There's also a negative side. That's our music industry. That is our music industry. I read that every year, maybe twice a year, because right, it's so 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 for me to survive in this music industry and not screw people over and having good people around me that doesn't screw other people over in our music community, I think I sustained very well and I'm very proud of myself. And that's why I say a lot of these young kids live on the IG. This is all fake. This is like all fake. What people have to understand, why did you get in the music industry? If you got in the music industry to become famous, your 15 minutes is going to be up sooner than you think. And the next thing you're going to do, because you know, like what I love about Sway Lee's not even on Instagram as much as he used to be because he's living his life. You know what I'm saying? There's only one Sway Lee. Stop being like a Sway Lee. There's only like one Chris Brown. Stop being like a Chris Brown. If you're doing it for like, if you're doing it for the right reasons, if you want to change, you want to do something that you totally, totally, truly love, then money should not be. I didn't get into the music industry for money. I got into it, like I told you in the interview. I got into meet more chicks. That became a career for me. See, I went in differently. All I wanted to do was music. I didn't really care so much about the money. I had more I had more fun working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day with Teddy Riley because I wanted to learn. It was like a fruit that you always want to eat. I was learning so much about music to a musical friggin' genius like Teddy Riley. I don't think people realize how much of a genius he is. He is absolutely extraordinary. And I wish to God people can have the experience that I had. I really do. There's a couple of things I would like to change because it is called the music business. But other than that, I never really wanted to get a traditional manager because they sometimes tend to take away what's really important is the music end of it because they're only getting paid when you get paid. And it's like, it's only a paycheck. And it's like, okay, so you got a Tesla, big deal. Okay, so you got a Ferrari, big deal. So now you got to whore yourself to pay for that Ferrari or that Tesla. So or that lifestyle. But are you truly happy? I see you on Instagram and I'm looking through your eyes. I remember I was a cop. There's a lot of pain in there. I don't drink, I don't smoke. The reason why I don't drink and don't smoke is because I don't want anybody to know my vices. It's an old cop thing. And also I have to represent myself. What is it like if you go in there, you're smoking and drinking on your session, and they're paying you to do that shit. And if the session gets fucked up, they're gonna blame you, not yourself, not them. So somebody has to have some type of civility in the room. And that's why I try to tell my son with Gianni and Soleil, you know, don't give too much people information. Give the information that you want them to see. Like with Gianni, he's a baseball player. He's going to be the best baseball because that's how we taught them to take this to the next level. And that's why I try to tell up and coming mixers and producers, they say, yo, I got some different shit. It's not different. It's not different. What's different is if you take the time and go back and listen, that's going to be different because it's going to change the way you write. That's why I love Metro Boomin so much. I think I brought up Metro Boomin about 3 or 4 times. The reason why I love Metro Boomin because he did something different. And it's not just about the 808s. He made 808s sound more musical than any producer I've ever met in my life. And I never worked with him. There's no push for him on me. I just respect what he does.
You and I have a mutual love, and I mean a deep love for baseball.
Oh my God, yeah.
And both of us have, had kids that come through Little League. And
Hmm.
tell me about your life in baseball and what kind of joy you get from that. I mean, I certainly could empathize, but talk to me a little bit about your son. And I've followed some of the baseball
Oh,
developments in his life.
yeah.
And speak to me, my friend. Speak to me about
Oh,
baseball.
okay. So this is a little bit deeper. We had this conversation before. Baseball is like being in the music industry. There's a lot of great individual players that make a big team, and patience is when you get that big hit. That's the correlation of baseball and music business. There's more to it I can get into, but with watching my son have a passion for something, I never got that from my dad because he's old European type. He started to get that when he got older, and God rest his soul, he was trying to do that for my son, And I promised myself that the music business is never going to take away my family. Family comes first. There's a saying that I had with my ex-girlfriend a long time ago. She said, "You love music more than you love me." I said, "Yes, I do," because it was true at that time. Until I found somebody that has my same type of harmony, which is my wife right now. I love my wife. I'm in love with music, but I love my wife. I couldn't say that before because it's it's a lifestyle. Music, that's why there's a lot of divorces, because a lot of people don't know when to separate their music life, that music lifestyle, and that home lifestyle. That really gets to be a point. So going into baseball, when I'm in the music industry, I'm Jean-Marie the Mixer, but I'm a better father. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a better father than a better mixer. And that made me a better that made me a better mixer as being a great father. So watching my son do what he loves, the passion, and not really pushing him, because I was never his coach. I was decent at baseball, but he's great at baseball. Like, I didn't have to say shit. I was Uber, my wife was Lyft. That was our job. And when he wanted me to do soft tosses with him, I was there. When he wanted me to do like hit like we found some techniques. Like I remember playing with a bunch of Puerto Ricans and Dominicans in Jersey City, and we used to play batilla, which is based on the bottle caps. I showed him how we do that. That's why he's going to UNLV. Had we never had the pandemic, I think Gianni might have been a consideration to go to the MLB. But right now, he's going to UNLV D1 school because of his passion, because he believes in that passion. He lives and breathes it every single day. And I think a lot has to do that because of what my wife does and what I do. My wife's an actress, and I'm in the music industry. And he knows that he's in the entertainment industry and what it takes, the sacrifices it takes to do what we do. Like the sacrifices I did in my 20s, where everybody was like smoking and drinking and doing their thing. I was in the studio sleeping underneath the console. That's the only place that Teddy wouldn't find me. He knows what that is because his uncle Teddy told Gianni, he said, "Man, your dad sacrificed his 20s to give you your life right now. I will give anything up for my kids, anything. If tomorrow says, dude, you got to give up music for my kids," I said, okay. That's how much love I have for the music, because you know what they say, if you love it so much, you have to let it go and then let it come back to you if it's really meant to be. That happened to me 10 times in my music career, 10 times. And it always came back. And I always stayed my philosophy and my integrity. It's not about how much weed you smoke. It's about how much lives you can change. And hopefully one day with Gianni playing baseball for UNLV, he's going to change his life and change other people's lives watching him play. He did it. You know what's so funny? There's a baseball player, God rest his soul, named Tyler Skaggs, and Gianni's head coach at Oaks Christian, the school that they graduated from, had an ex baseball player named uh, uh, Royce Clayton, and Royce Clayton was his baseball coach. Dimitri Young was his hitting, is still his hitting coach, and Jeff Weaver was the pitching coach. But that's all major leaguers, man. It's hilarious. And Royce goes up. He said, "Listen, man, uh, this is the second time Gianni did it this year. No, Gianni won MVP his freshman year and his senior year." And he goes, "This they saw that they want to use Gianni in this inaugural Tyler Skaggs event for the Tyler Skaggs Foundation, only to find out that I know Tyler Skaggs' brother-in-law, who's also in the music industry." And he said, "Yo, Gianni's going to play this Tyler Skaggs." And he goes, "Yeah, how'd you know?" He goes, "That's my brother-in-law." I said, "Well, dude, I'm so sorry about your loss, right?" And I met his sister, which is basically Tyler's wife. She goes, "Well, I think good things are going to happen for Gianni today." So I said, "All right." So it was an MLB event. You know, Gianni was doing a lot of stuff for the MLB developmental program with the Hank Aaron thing. And my mother-in-law was there. So I know my kid is in the entertainment industry because he loves a crowd, right? I love that. Doesn't get shook. Ryan Braun was his manager for the Tyler Skaggs thing, right? He goes, "Hi, I'm Gianni Horvat." Ryan goes, "I know who you are." And he said, "Dad, he knows who I am." So Gianni's like, "No one knows me. No one knows me," you know? I said, "Gianni, look, I think they know who you are, you know?" And they were the away team. Gianni was the leadoff hitter. First knock, 370 at the Jackie Robinson UCLA Stadium. Gets even better, Ray. He switched from shortstop to second base. That's not his spot. Why is it that he did a diving stab play to get the out? He won the MVP for that thing. Here's what the capper is. Because we had a COVID year, they only saw Gianni hit. So Coach Stoltze from UNLV said, "Gianni, when you playing?" He goes, "Hey, coach, I'm actually playing this weekend." I'm there. Coach Stoltze never saw Gianni play at all. Recruited Gianni off of Twitter feeds, okay? Hunter Green's dad, Russell Green, the number 2 overall pick, I think 2017, loves Gianni, went to the event, knew Coach Stoltze. He goes, "This, oh, so you're here to see Gianni, right?" He goes, "Yeah, I never saw him play." He goes, "This, put up a chair. This is going to be a treat." That was it. And he won the MVP award for that game. Won the MVP. So the passion is what people needs to understand, what we brought to the table for our kids. And if you have that passion, there's nothing going to stop you. So I'm like his biggest fan. Me and his mom and sisters is his biggest fan. And we just stay back. We don't force him to do anything. I didn't force him to go hit. He has his own. And this is what, at an early age, like when we used that to get his grades up, to be quite honest with you, Ray. So at the age of 9, I said, "You like baseball?" He goes, "I love baseball." I'm like, now, mind you, this is the time of basketball players. He loves all sports, but that one he gravitated to. You know what he said to me when he was like 9, 10 years? He goes, "Gianni, you're so much better at football." He goes, "Yeah, but I'm not good at baseball. That's harder for me. I want to be great at this." It was challenging him. And I said, "Wow." I said, "Okay." I said, "I tell you what, man, you do good in your school, I'll get you a glove." Pulled the grades up. All the nations need. He goes, "That's it." And they said, "How far you want to take this?" Well, at the age of 10, he goes, "I want to take this to college." And at the age of 14, he said, "I want to be a pro baseball player." I said, "For the Yankees?" Because he broke my heart. He's a Yankee fan. I'm a Met fan, so that's all right. But he said, he goes, "This." I said, "So you want to play for the Yankees?" He goes, "This." "No, I want to play for a team that wants me so I can win a world championship for that city." I went, wow. He's saying that right now. You know what he said to me? He said, "I want to go to Omaha with this team." I said, "Gianni, it's really hard. You know, you got, because, you know, UNLV was looking at Gianni. And we thought, honestly, I thought Tim Corbett was going to get Gianni. But because of COVID, they couldn't really commit. And I'm really happy that UNLV took Gianni, because let me tell you something, Gianni is getting the best care that I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen an organization as good. If anybody's out there that has anybody older that wants to bring some kids, I know it's in Vegas. But let me tell you something. That's a whole different world. They're taking care of him. Johnny got hurt. Class said they're driving him to and from therapy. They're feeding their tails. It's ridiculous. They're treating their baseball players like football players. It's ridiculous.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's really, really amazing. Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, man. For me, I spent 10 years coaching. So I coached my son for about 10 years. We won a lot of games, a lot of championships. We had some real ugly games as well. But I gotta tell you, I mean, I'm a busy guy. I do a lot of things. But dude, when I submit my lineup card to the other coach, and I set the field, and the first pitch goes off, I don't think of anything until that game's over. Like my mind is I coach every pitch.
Oh, wow.
Every pitch. I coach every swing. Like I'm in every swing. I'm in every pitch when my pitch is up there. And then I completely block out. I mean, I don't think of any music or any software or business or nothing. I just completely get lost in the game. And the kids, they know that. They could see I'm in every pitch.
Yeah.
So anyway, man, well, we could talk baseball forever, but you know, I love baseball, man. For me, baseball is just this seesaw battle between the pitcher and the hitter. And it's just so magical. It's so perfect. So let's just wrap it up now. I'm going to ask you we have a lot of people watching this, Jean-Marie, who wants to,
okay.
You know, they want to get into the business. They want to get into the game. They want to become like you. They want to become a successful engineer. What's your advice? What's the simplest advice you can give them right now?
Stay true to yourself. Whatever that is, stay true to yourself. That's the best thing. The best advice is, if you're getting into the business for the love of the music and to change the culture, don't let that wave you. You're going to fall into that, you know, the dark days. Don't do the money chase. Do the creative chase, because that money is going to lead you to somewhere where you don't want to be. So be true to yourself. You know what I'm saying? It's like, try not to be an asshole and try to take away what God gave you. And I bring up this because music is very spiritual to me. It heals people. It brings joy. Definitely makes you sad a lot of times, but it's a spiritual journey. It's like you said, like that wave. You know what I'm saying? The one thing, you got to stay true to yourself. If it feels wrong, walk away. It's not does the dollars make the sense? That's all I got to tell you.
Well, thank you so much, man. It's been, I don't know if people realize how long we've been talking. You've been so generous with your time. You know, you are a great inspiration for me. I respect you so much.
Thank you, man.
I think your work is spectacular. I think the way you mix is just otherworldly. What can I say, man? I'm a fan, and thanks for taking the time. And I know the people watching this are going to get so much out of it. So thanks so much for sharing, Jean-Marie. And send my regards to the family, man. I want to come and see Gianni play. You know it.
I will, man. You got to see Gianni play. Yeah, man. So there's one thing I want to leave for the people that want to ask a personal question. Just hit me up on the email. Just say, jmh@jeanmariehorvat.com. Just hit me an email. I would love to pass along any information I possibly can.
Thank you so much. Send my regards to the family. I love you.
Absolutely. I love you more, bro.